Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live today from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. Ian is here today. Hello, Ian.
What up, what up?
So I got to say, Adam Vingan has, I think, touched a little bit of a nerve with Willie Donick. Wanted to fire the coach. I hate to say it's kind of exciting, because it's never exciting to have your team suck so bad that you're talking about fire the coach. But it is kind of the knockdown, drag out that we're looking for, right? At least, that gets me excited. Again, I've said I wouldn't fire the coach, but that's just me right now. By the way, is the text line working? This is something I heard on Robbie and Joe this morning.
I haven't checked it yet.
That I haven't thought about, but I guess text in, see what happens. Brian Callahan, this is kind of a surprise to me too. Brian Callahan normally talks at like 11 o'clock on Wednesdays. Brian Callahan at the podium after practice is over. We will take that live here on the program. So we don't normally do, because normally we don't, Brian Callahan doesn't talk while we're on the air. So I want to start on this today. Fox 17. I think Fox 17 is reputable. Fox 17 ran a poll on Twitter. So this isn't one of these Jared Stillman polls. I saw somebody on Reddit got mad because, I don't know when we did this, like a month ago, 2 months ago, Ian, when I asked, who would you rather have be the GM of the Titans, Chad Brinker and Rand Carthon or me? And it was like 51-49. It was like within the margin of error.
The trolls.
And so people would say, well, that's just a Jared Stillman poll. That's not so this is a Fox 17 poll. This is not a Jared Stillman poll. Fox 17 ran a poll that says 84% of the people think that the Tennessee Titans need leadership or staff changes. Now, that is a very vague group, like a very wide-ranging group that you're asking the fans to vote on when you're saying, do you think they need staff and leadership changes? Because leadership, again, you could be talking about the owner. The owner's not going to fire herself. We know that. That's how the NFL works. But there are Titan fans all the time that say, oh, please fire the owner, which you can't do. So maybe somebody hits yes saying that. Again, leadership to staff, that could mean anything. That could mean the assistant to the assistant offensive line coach that maybe they need to change. But again, 84% of the people think, yes, make changes. And I think the gist of that poll is that the fans are not buying what is being sold. Now, I have two separate, yet I think independently important opinions on 84% of the fan base. We'll use Fox 17's poll. 84% of the fan base being out on the current leadership, administration, whatever you want to call it, surrounding the Titans. The first thing is Amy Adams-Strunk listens to the fans. It is obvious to me that the Titans ownership group, maybe just Amy, I don't know, they hear the noise. And I know this because every single move I feel like they've made, with maybe the exception of firing Mike Vrabel, every single move they've made has kind of been one that the internet has really supported. For instance, Mike Mularkey. It's hilarious. A couple of weeks ago, Mike Mularkey told the story of lying to Ian Rappaport about getting a contract extension before he got canned. And the whole point of that was that he was going to get Ian Rappaport to report that he was getting a contract extension and the Titans were going to go crazy because they look so stupid and joke's on you as you fire me. But I actually saw that tweet that Ian Rappaport put out from 2018 about Mike Mularkey signing a contract extension when Mike Mularkey was in fact getting fired. And the replies to it at the time were, oh no, oh God, this is awful. What are we doing? Oh, we're ruining Mariota. Oh God. For a coach that took the worst team in the NFL and in 2 years won 19 games, including a playoff game on the road at Kansas City. The fans hated Mike Mularkey. I liked Mike Mularkey. Floyd coached Mike Mularkey in Minnesota. He thought it was crazy, the idea that the fans didn't like to coach. I think a lot of people in the media thought it was kind of crazy especially after the Titans came out and they said after the Kansas City win, he was the coach going forward. And yet the fans wanted him fired and they got their wish. Again, as crazy as it sounds, and I think these are the times that we need to remember stuff like this when the team sucks. There was a point in time where winning a playoff game was not good enough around here. And Amy Adams Strunk fired Mike Mularkey, and everybody said, yeah! And I thought, my God. But again, there was kind of the Robinson and the Mularkey and the backstabbing and the Vrabel and the whatever. Then they go to Philadelphia. Almost 2 years ago to the date, they go to Philly. And we know what happened. A.J. Brown spanked the goalpost. And on Tuesday, she fired John Robinson. And I still think there was a lot of internet fans, not regular people, but internet fans that said, yeah! Yeah! I couldn't believe it. I mean, this guy's won 61% of his games. But Caleb Farley, Jared, I know. I criticized Caleb Farley when it happened. I compared it to cryptocurrency, which, by the way, is making a comeback, as apparently is Caleb Farley with the Panthers. But again, it was a move that was reacting to the fans. I heard Robbie and Joe with Paul this morning. Paul said on his drive in, they were advertising tickets for the Bengal game on the billboards because it's like they know nobody's going on Sunday to the Jacksonville game. Amy listens to the fans. And the reason I think you're in the mess you're in right now is because they spent too much time listening to the fans. And I don't think that's ever a good policy to have. It should be noted at the end of last year, Mike Tomlin's contract was up in Pittsburgh, and there was all this talk about after 20 years or whatever it's been, after 20 years, is it time for Mike Tomlin in Pittsburgh maybe to go separate ways? And I thought it was, but Pittsburgh. There's a difference. So that's the first part. When I see 84% of the fans saying staff changes, I'm like, well, Amy shouldn't listen to the fans. Amy should, run the team the way that good owners run the team. But I know, just based off of history, that it's like kind of the fringes of the internet they listen to for whatever reason. The second, again, independent of the first thought I have with that poll, is this. And that is, these fans aren't buying what they're being sold. They spent a whole off season of sunshine pumping and toxic positivity, and Brian Callahan will be up there in a second at the podium, and I'm sure there'll be some sunshine. And these fans ain't hearing it because they're watching the games on Sunday. And after an entire March and April and May of, yeah, coach said Peter Skoronski's coming along great, they watch the games on Sunday. And they see it doesn't necessarily add up. Brian Callahan at the podium right now.
A lot of updates. We got plenty of guys on the report. We'll see how the week progresses, but expect, feel good about most of them. But there's a couple that we're going to have to wait and see through the week how they feel by the time we get to practice. So with that, I'll let you go ahead.
Give an update on Traylon Burks.
I do. I should have mentioned this probably before, but he went on IR with an ACL injury initially. It was a loose ACL that wasn't fully torn, and so they had to go to see some doctors and some specialists, and some weeks went by after he went on IR, but he eventually had to have ACL surgery. So he is out for the year, not coming back obviously with that surgery. So went to IR, had some tests and some further work done, and had to have the surgery. So the surgery was, I don't want to speak out of turn on the date, but couple weeks back probably, but it was from the time he went to IR to when it happened was also a couple of weeks. So kind of got lost in the shuffle there on the IR board.
It's good to get Duncan back in the mix and you start his process.
Yeah, he's coming back. Worked at practice today, so it'll be he's getting back with his feet underneath him, playing a little bit. So we'll see how he progresses through the week for sure. I don't know that he'll be ready for the game this week, but we're getting him back to work.
still be something that you consider, I know Nick's been holding it down for a couple of weeks now, but Kentucky, make some noise as far as that goes.
Yeah, we're gonna see. He's got to feel good enough to do it. But yeah, I mean, we had some hopes that he'd be able to help us this year, and didn't last very long in that Buffalo game. Lasted a couple of plays. So we'll see. I think there's some if he's here and ready to play and he can help us, then we'll certainly put him in there to help us.
As you look at punt return, what are your thoughts there?
Yeah.
Think Jaquan will get an opportunity again, or?
Yeah, I mean, there's I won't give away all my information for you, but there's we're looking at some things to see if we can get that better. Obviously, the ball on the ground is too much, and then we got to get that fixed and secured. So we're working through that process. Yep.
How frustrating is it? I mean, it's like, okay, you plug this hole, that one comes up, and you continue to have to bounce around and put out different fires.
Yeah, truthfully, that's what it is every year, and to some degree. I mean, we just had more of them this year, I think, than we'd like to have. But yeah, it's certainly you feel like you fix something and you're feeling good about a part of it or a phase of it, and then something else you got to try that comes up again, or something else comes up that's new. So those things are frustrating. Yeah, we'd like to find a level of consistency that allows us to play to our capability, which I don't think we've hit yet. So it does get frustrating that we fix one thing, something starts to play better, and then we have to address another issue. But truthfully, that's every season in all three phases. You're always sort of adapting and adjusting based on good, bad, injuries, et cetera. So that's sort of just how the NFL season goes. Just feels like we've had to do a lot of it.
Julius Wood by any chance? I wonder if you had any kind of explanation.
No, I don't have any real comment on that. Those things are sort of out of my jurisdiction and wheelhouse. So that's a league matter.
Given what happened to Trevor Lawrence, is that a teachable moment for you and your quarterbacks about having to protect themselves, sliding, that kind of thing?
Yeah, every Friday we do our situational masters. Luke gets up there and Clint gets up there, and they do things from around the league, and that's one of the things that often comes up is for our quarterbacks. When they're on the boundary, running out of bounds, making sure that if you're going out, go out. Don't screw around trying to get an extra yard or two, because those things we teach and we point out, particularly when you're sliding too, when you're going to slide, get down. So those are all things that we use to teach any clips from around the league, and that certainly will be one of them, both for our offense and our defense, and just knowing when and where you can hit the quarterback and you can't, and that's all part of the game and within the rules, and we got to play within them. And so we do a good job of trying to make sure we know what those rules are.
You want to avoid, sacks and hits on the quarterback as much as possible, but sometimes they're inevitable. How much of a needed quality is it from a quarterback to be able to just get up from that and not be gun shy and still make the next play, as opposed to some of these guys that you see that get a little PTSD?
Yeah, I think that's quarterback play. You're going to get hit in the NFL. The rushers are too good. The pressures are designed to hit the quarterback, and people do a good job of getting home. And you have to be able to, as a quarterback in the league, be able to stand in the pocket and take hits and get back up. And I think that's one of the things I've been most impressed from Will is his ability and his toughness as a quarterback in the pocket. He takes hits and he pops right back up and keeps rolling. And that's impressive. And it's hard for quarterbacks to show toughness the way other guys do. And that's the one way quarterbacks can, is when they take a shot and get up and make a throw. That's a big deal.
Without naming names, have you ever had one that became gun shy, and what did you do about it?
No, I've been fortunate to be around some pretty good ones that are pretty dang tough. And that's one of the things that they're good at. And quarterbacks in the league are going to have to stand in there. And, if you don't like getting hit, get rid of the ball. That's one of the things you can do. Obviously, Peyton Manning in his later years, he just knew where to go with the ball, and he didn't take very many hits or sacks because he didn't want to. And so at 38 years old, I wouldn't want to either. But he knew how to protect himself in that way. And then really, I've never had a guy ever be gun shy before. It's just part of the position that's required to be able to stand in there.
What do you think Harold is right now in terms of ability to generate any kind of consistent pass play?
Yeah, I think we need more from the whole group. Pass rush wise, we've had spots where it's looked good. Harold's had some production, and the idea is we need more from everybody, and that's all the guys on the defensive line. That's our pressure package, all of it. Just more pressure on a quarterback. And when we've pressured the quarterback, we've forced him into errors. The ball's come up. We've forced interceptions. Those things are all things that we have to do more of to get the ball back and affect the quarterback, certainly.
Why do you think those guys haven't been able to string together multiple weeks of consistent playing that's been more up and down?
It's hard to say. I think we've been really close a lot too. There's been a lot of plays where the quarterback's just getting the ball out right as the contact's being made, and so those things don't get to show up as much. But I think we're pressuring, we're creating pressure, but we're not affecting it enough. And I think we're consistency wise from top to bottom. I think as a football team, we got to be better. I don't think there's any one area that can say they've played consistently enough. And part of the reason why we are where we are is that consistency from game to game and down to down. So I think it all needs to be more consistent from top to bottom.
With developing a young quarterback, the product we see on Sundays can look very just non-linear and up and down, and obviously you guys have experienced that with Will. But I guess behind the scenes, what are some of the most important things that you look at to make sure a guy is on the right track, and what are maybe some of those things for Will?
That's a long answer probably, but in general, looking for guys to be consistent in the approach, their week to week routine, how they practice. That's a big part of what it looks like, the consistency in practice. And then you're going to look at when we're making mistakes, are we learning from them? Is there repeat mistakes? Are we repeating things that we've talked about multiple times? And the cool thing right now for Will is that as we've corrected things, he's corrected them, and that's been really, really fun to watch as he's made adjustments from game to game. Sometimes even from in the game, made an adjustment to a coverage or a read, and that part's been good to see. And that's generally what you're looking for in a very overarching term, is that may not necessarily show up exactly on Sunday, or your performance. You might not always be having a great performance because a lot of factors go into that. But the repeating of mistakes, as many as limited as you can make that's when you see growth. And then taking some coaching, for example, Will throwing a ball away on a first or second down if you're kind of imminent to a sack and save us the loss. Did that a few times. He's been sliding a lot. Those are when he scrambles. Those are all things that you see in the growth in the game, and that's just an example for us for what Will's going through progression wise. So it's little things that sometimes not very glamorous either, but those are all things that tell us that he's taking coaching from practice to games and making improvements.
So good for the most part in run D this year. After last week, though, do you sort of appeal to their pride to kind of bounce back from an outing like that? Yeah,
I certainly hope so. Pride is definitely a part of it. There's a professionalism involved with the expectation, and that was a game that should fuel us to be much better. We've been good. We need to not have the game like that. But sometimes that happens. Sometimes you get humbled in the NFL. Sometimes you get beat bad. And it's all about how you respond. And for us, how we respond this week is going to be critical. And that's our focus is bouncing back from a performance that, wasn't good enough by our standards at any stretch. And we got to do a lot better.
Right. Quarterback development in the league, the rookie range scale, the way this works. Do you think you guys are getting enough time to get evaluated when they first come in the league?
I think there's two parts to that question probably, but ultimately you look around at the guys that maybe we're giving up on that are around the league that are playing decent football. There's just not a lot of patience for that, and development for quarterbacks takes time. And what happens is you get the one guy per class that jumps that progression. Even Joe Burrow wasn't Joe Burrow the first year he played before he got hurt. He was getting better and playing better, but he wasn't what he is now. But the Jaden Daniels and the CJ Stroud and the guys that come on and immediately sort of clicks for them, and they're the offensive rookie of the year, whatever that is. There's also a whole bunch of guys that don't necessarily have the same situation, circumstances set up that need the time to develop. And there is a part of that guys need time. They need to play. They need to get coached. They need to make errors. They need to improve. And so there's not a lot of patience for that in general, because there is the outliers. There's the one guy or two guys that hit the right way. But you see there's some pretty good quarterbacks, guys that are playing decent football that were sort of given up on by the teams that they were with. And I think that would prove that there probably is a patience part that gets neglected.
A lot of times with special teams, like you see guys kind of cut their teeth there leading into positions on offense or defense. James Williams or, Cedric Gray? Are there guys that you're seeing do that? And if not, do you think like the problems with special teams inhibited that?
No, I think that we're on that track right now with, Cedric's been playing a couple games now. James has been playing quite a bit. Bryce Oliver, I think, has he's really stepped up and played well on special teams. And I think Bryce has a future as a receiver in this league. And that's where you start to see what guys are made of in a game day experience. And you get to see him make plays. I mean, my best personal example was Chris Harris Jr. Chris came into Denver as an undrafted free agent and played special teams and was phenomenal. And every time you make more plays on special teams, you look around and you go, we probably need to find a place for that guy somewhere else. And Chris turned into one of the best, nickel corners in football for a long time there. But he cut his teeth playing teams his first year. And that's an important part of player development, is those guys making plays on teams, playing on teams, and you learn how to play NFL football. So we got some young guys playing out there, and those guys have done a good job. And that's a part of getting them ready to go to the next role, whatever, more snaps at linebacker or whatever the position is.
Linebacker in a pinch on Sunday, you went to Gifford.
Correct.
Rather than to one of the young guys.
Yep.
Does that tell us the patience and the progress of the young guys?
Yeah, there's just a comfortable. It's not really a word, but it's a confidence that Gifford with the green dot, being able to make the calls and get everybody lined up. That's a lot to put on a rookie off the bench. But certainly there's going to be some opportunities for those guys to play, and they're going to have some chances that they maybe not would have otherwise had due to injuries. And they got to rise to the occasion and earn that trust and earn the right to be able to be the guy that goes in there when we need him to. So that's all a part of the process. Yep. Thanks, guys.
By the way, what happened to the whole, the green dot's not that big of a deal from the offseason? Ian, you remember that from the offseason?
Yeah, working through the green dot. We got options there.
The green dot, no, it doesn't matter where's the green dot. What happened to that? Anywho, that was Brian Callahan. Again, we start with this. Fox 17 runs a poll. 84% of the people think the Titans need leadership or staff changes. Did anything Brian Callahan say right there win you over a little bit? We'll get to that next. 615-737-1025. It's Stillman and Company on 1025 The Game. Stillman and company, Brian Callahan just met with the media at the podium, and the one little big nugget he threw out there, Traylon Burks out for the year with, I guess he had a loose ACL, then he had the ACL surgery. So does that mean that it was like a torn ACL surgery? I don't exactly know, but Traylon Burks out for the year. That's kind of, I guess, the big takeaway from the Brian Callahan press conference. And Brian Callahan said that how they respond this week will tell us a lot about that team. I think how they responded last week tells us a lot about that team, but that's just me. We'll hit your phones next. 615-737-1025. Stillman and company. Let me tell all the fine folks out there. Tune into 94.9 The Fan today for Vandy women's basketball as the Commodores will take on Miami with a 4 o'clock tip-off, and the pregame will begin at 3:45. Coverage also available on 94.9 The Fan's app and at 94.9thefan.com. And this week's Nashville's Best Deal is from Tito's Mexican Restaurant. Known for its vibrant flavors and festive atmosphere, they bring the heart of Mexico to Middle Tennessee. Enjoy mouth-watering tacos, sizzling fajitas, and delicious enchiladas, all served with a side of authentic Mexican flair. Get half off a $25 gift card now while supplies last at theGameNational.com/deals.
As I've said time and time again, I will never shy away from saying that I have extremely high expectations for our football team and really our entire organization. I expect us to build a team that is going to have sustained success and bring Lombardi trophies to the city of Nashville. I am confident that we have put the right pieces in place to bring that goal to life and build a future that Titan fans will be proud of.
That was Amy Adams Strunk at the beginning of the year, and I hate to say it, but right now, 84% of the Titan fans, according to a Fox 17 poll, roughly 700 or so participants on Twitter, say, yeah, they want leadership and staff changes. And the one thing I know about this administration, they react to what kind of the fringe of the internet says. Because I don't think, and I could be wrong, I don't think that a majority of Titan fans 2 years ago Friday were in favor of the decision to fire John Robinson when they did. I think a lot of people were, mystified. I mean, it's not like we didn't know his faults, but I think there were a lot of us that were like, wait a minute, hold on. In the middle of the season, when you're in first place, 7-5 with 61% of his games, but the fringes of the internet, it was like, yeah! Same with the Mike Mularkey thing. Phone lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025. One texter says, Burks is out for the year. I didn't know he was still on the team since he's disappeared on the field. So what happened was, when it comes to Burks, what happened was I think he got hurt in practice. And after he got hurt in practice, they said it was a loose ACL today. And then he had the ACL surgery a couple weeks ago. So he's out for the year and probably won't be back until the middle of next year. Now, I did see somebody put out there that said his time with the Titans is probably done. I mean, you can't just cut injured players like that. My guess would be Burke starts next year on the PUP list, works his way back onto the team. And because the money's guaranteed, he might still be on it. One texter into the text line, Adam in Portland says, oh, how about this? Adam in Portland says, Ian, I love Adam in Portland, but he says the fans did not hate Mike Mularkey. I made that up. I mean, again.
You made that up, he said?
That's what Adam in Portland's saying. That I made it up, that the fans.
I mean, they kind of liked Exotic Smash Mouth at first, but they were over Robisky and the whole thing.
So here's what I think really happened. Again, I don't know if it's the end all be all. First of all, I'm just responding to what I saw on Twitter when they pulled up the Ian Rappaport tweet about Mike Mularkey staying, because Mularkey basically called out Ian Rappaport for being kind of a bozo. And the responses, here you go. Sources, the Titans have offered Mike Mularkey an extension in the wake of their playoff run. He's staying. That was on January 14th of 2018. First guy, who is one of the biggest Titans fans on Twitter, but I think a little crazy sometimes, all caps. Are you serious? Second, gosh darn, really? And I say, gosh darn, that's not really what they said. Gosh darn, why not make a run at McDaniels and actually unleash Mariota? Please, Titans, don't waste his career. Two-tone blue blood. No, and a gif of Michael Scott from The Office just going, no, no, no. Muhammad, who's a Titan fan, this has Amy Adams written all over it. No way J-Rob would want to pick his own guys. What a disgrace. And they wonder why the stands were empty, because they put a mediocre product on the field. They want to be an 8-8 franchise forever. Somebody else, help fund a Fire Mularkey billboard. I guess there's a GoFundMe that you could. I wonder how much money they got. Sean, 6-10 next year. Hashtag Titan down. Again, that's just Twitter. But I'm telling you, the fans, when they were like, yeah! I was the one that was like, look, man, in my lifetime, I lived through the end of Jeff Fisher. I lived through Mike Munchak. I lived through Ken Wisenhunt. And I like the coach that doesn't lose as much as he wins. And he was winning more than he was losing. It's like they're sitting there saying, oh, we just want to be 8-8 forever. You're in the division round of the playoffs. You lost to Tom Brady. Did you think you were going to beat Tom Brady and the Patriots? Unbelievable. One texter, Andrew, says, Jared, I'm genuinely curious at this point to know if Titan fans will remember the A.J. Brown trade more for the fact that we lost such a great player in A.J., or what we gained is categorically an absolute bust in Burks. Both elements are obviously disappointing beyond measure, but which one do you think Titans fans will remember more looking back? I mean, that's the one thing, and we're going to be doing a lot of talking, probably on Friday's program, maybe tomorrow. We'll do a lot of talking about Amy Adams Strunk's decision to fire John Robinson 2 years ago to the day. It's almost like kind of a political thing where, you know how every presidential election, whatever party's not in office, says, were you better off 4 years ago? Were you better off? They always say that. Well, I will kind of pose the question, were you better off 2 years ago when you were 7-5? When you were hosting Jacksonville? You're hosting Jacksonville this week. I don't even know. Is CBS broadcasting the game, or are they just going to say, you know what? Let's just spare these people of watching this game. Let's put another game on TV for the people in Nashville, which obviously they can't do. I'm kidding. But like, that's how bad it is. You were in first place when you were hosting Jacksonville, and she hauled off and fired him in the middle of the year. Actually, not a terrible crew. I'm a little surprised. CBS does not have the doubleheader, so most of the country gets Cleveland. Well, there's just no good games. Most of the country gets Cleveland at Pittsburgh on CBS. That's Jim Nantz and Tony Romo. Kevin Harlan and Trent Green have the Jets in Miami. Ugh. Andrew Callahan, Tiki Barber, and Jason McCourty get your game. I like Callahan. And I'm fine with McCourty. Ian, what are your thoughts on Tiki? I don't like Tiki.
Well, I like that he's not by himself.
Well,
They got a
I'd rather
combo.
just have two guys.
Really?
I don't like the three-guy crews. Because both guys, when they have three guys on CBS, both guys feel the need that they have to talk in between each play.
Yeah, I see that.
What happened to James Lofton?
Good question.
Spiro Ditas and Adam Archuleta are
You used to
Las
hate
Vegas
James
and Tampa
Lofton, though.
Bay. Yeah, but then once they started calling every Titan game, I started to enjoy it. And Seattle at Arizona is a late game that most of us aren't going to get. That's Ian Eagle and Charles Davis. CBS does not have a good game at all. The big game is Buffalo and the Rams. Boy, they treat the Rams like we care about them. There are no good games this week. Atlanta, Minnesota, Carolina, Philly, New Orleans, the Giants, Buffalo, the Rams, Chicago, San Francisco. Who's on Thursday night? Green Bay, Detroit, that's a good game. LA, Kansas City, Sunday night, that's a good game. And then Cincy, Dallas, they both suck, but, hey, it's Dallas. 615-737-1025. Again, you all can tell me you didn't like the firing of Malarkey, but I remember taking your phone calls, and you guys were like, oh, he was so bad. And then they made up the whole he wouldn't fire Robisky thing, which I thought was a little ridiculous. It never got to that. Sean says, Twitter comments are not real life. Most Titans fans want a Robisky out, not Malarkey. Again, from my understanding, and Mike Malarkey kind of made it sound that way too when he said he walked into the office and they were like, you're done. It never got to the will you fire Terry Robisky. Corey Curtis says it all the time. In the middle of that season, the Texans came to town with Mike Vrabel as their defensive coordinator, and John Robinson stopped talking to Mike Malarkey. At that point, they were 8-4. For whatever that's worth. 615-737-1025 here on the program. Chris Sanders joins us next. He drank the Kool-Aid after the win over the Texans. I did not. How does he feel after the loss against the Commanders? We'll do it next. Stillman and Company at 1025 The Game. Be sure to join us on Sunday for the award-winning pregame show. That's Chris Sanders, Jared Stillman, Derek Mason. We'll be live at JBJ's downtown from 9:30 to 11. Vandy basketball will come on early. So we'll be there from 9:30 to 11 to break down the Titans and the Jags. The award-winning pregame show presented by Parman Tractor Equipment, Sundeck Nashville, Sloan's Motorcycle ATV, and award-winning Blue Note Juke Joint and Blue Note Crossroads Bourbon. Chris Sanders just joined us now on the program, presented by Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning. Chris.
Yes, sir.
I told you guys this game on Sunday had some juice. We were going to see if the Titans could show us a little something. You and Derek drank the Kool-Aid. You guys picked the Titans. I did not. And it was 28.
Wait a minute. You did.
No, I did not. It was 28.
Okay.
I picked the Commanders 28-17. It was 28-0 before
You're right.
you could blink.
You're right.
What did you think?
Here's the crazy thing about the whole situation. Simmons, after the game, he gave a quote. He said this. It says, we have to learn how to handle success. And, Jared, I was very, very surprised because just like what you said, at the blink of an eye, they're down 28-0. But here's the one thing that I hate to talk about the Titans, but I have to be real. The disappointing part about it is the energy that they didn't have when they came out from the start. I mean, you look up and you look at the Commanders, they're jumping around, they're excited, and the energy level was high on their side. The body language was great. And then you look at on the Tennessee Titans side, you just kind of see guys just kind of going through the motion, just kind of, okay, somebody else make a tackle, somebody else make a play. And I was just very, very surprised because I promise you, I thought that they would come out with the hair on fire, the way they played against the Texans.
Chris, what did you make of Simmons' comments that they were hungover from the Texans game? Callahan saying he didn't see any of that because they'd only won one game. What do you make of the difference in what the coach said and what Simmons said?
Yeah, it's just wild. I don't know if it was a hungover. I just think that, they just didn't come to play. I mean, it was just – if you just watch the game, the Commanders were playing at a totally different level. I mean, Daniels was balling, the receivers was balling, the defense was flying around. And if you look at the Texans game, look at the energy that the Titans have. The defense was flying around. Aiden Hatch to the football. Levis was making some good throws. Now you get to the Commanders situation, and they look like a totally different team. So I can understand why, Simmons said that, but I can't understand why, Brian Callahan didn't see it coming.
Okay, Chris Sanders is with us on the program. Fox 17 ran a poll. So this is not a Jared Stillman poll.
Okay.
84% of the people think the Titans need leadership changes. And I guess the way they worded it was leadership or staff. I mean, I think the gist of it is at the top.
Right.
Do you agree or disagree with the 84% of the people? And what do you make of that?
I think that this is just me now. I think that you need better leadership with the players. And that's how I'm going to take it this route because, I know a lot of times we want to put on the organization, which is okay, but I think your leaders need to step up. And I respect Jeffrey Simmons. I think Jeffrey Simmons is an outstanding guy, but as a leader, you got to get those guys ready. As a leader, you got to make sure that these guys are ready. As a leader, you have to take the initiative to where if it's down, we're down 14-0. I'm gathering everybody up on the sideline and say, hey, listen, we don't play like this. We play to a standard. We got to make plays, and it starts with me. And that's how you handle it. I know everybody wants to point the finger at, the ownership and the coach. That's great and everything, but at the end of the day, you're watching the game. It goes to your leaders, and I think that some of the leaders got to step up.
Yeah, but isn't that the coach's job? Like you're talking about, it's the leaders that got to get the players to show up to play. Isn't that the coach's job? And isn't it the GM's job to get the right players on the team?
I mean, I agree with the right players, but also as a leader, Jared, if I'm a great leader, you make everybody around you better. And I think that Simmons is a phenomenal player, but I think that you need somebody in a different leader that's going to make sure and demand these guys get it done. And I think that, sometimes we do a lot of talking, we do a lot of saying what we're going to do, but the performance is a little different. And I think that's the situation that we're having.
Well, then isn't that on the general manager for not putting leadership on the football team?
Yeah, but see the thing about it is you can bring a whole bunch of guys in because everybody thinks that a guy's born with leadership. No, they're not. They have to be taught how to lead. And so if I am a wide receiver coach, and I need a receiver to lead in my group, I'm going to pull him to the side and say, okay, check this out, come here. this is how you lead. This is how you do every drill. I want you to implement that with the other guys. So as a coach, if I'm a wide receiver coach, a linebacker coach, I'm going to go to that guy and say, okay, Jeffrey Simmons, come here. Let me talk to you. This is how I want you to lead. He's got to take the ownership of that, and I don't think he's doing okay at it.
Yeah. But to me, his job is to play defensive tackle.
I agree, but
coach's
when
job
you get
is the one to get the players ready to play. The GM's job is the one that has to get
100%.
the right leaders on the team to lead the team. And if they didn't see
Right.
that, then they're not doing their jobs well enough. Chris Sanders with us on the program. Almost 2 years to the date that Amy
Yeah.
Adams Strunk shocked all of us and fired John Robinson.
No.
Looking back on that, do you think that was the right decision or the wrong decision?
Ooh, that's a toughie. I think can I put it in a different way? I think it was a wrong decision of the timing. I'm gonna say it at this. I'm not saying this guy's not the guy or this guy's not. I'm not saying that. I'm saying it was the wrong decision at that time, because here's the situation. You're 7-5 and you're winning the division, and then a couple of months before you give you give John Robinson an extension, but then you fire him in the middle of the season because you lose to Philadelphia. I just think the timing was bad of then firing. I'm not saying that, Rand is not doing this and that, because I really respect Rand. But I just think that the timing that they fired John Robinson, I think it was really, really bad for the organization.
If you had to pick today between Rand or John Robinson,
golly, no, don't do it.
Who would you pick?
I can't do that, man. I think that Rand Carthon needs a little bit more time. I think you give Rand Carthon another year. I think he deserves that. I think he should, because he came into a situation that he really wasn't in control. This year he was in control. I think you give him another year to prove himself, and that's how I got to answer it. I can't pick one or the other. I just think they should give Rand Carthon another job, another year.
Why should we have to give him another year? If let's just say what you said was right, and he wasn't in control, though. Again, the reporting is that Vrabel went to Amy and said, "I want to be in control," and Amy said no. So we know Vrabel wasn't in control, but okay,
absolutely.
Rand signed up to work with Vrabel. That was the deal. Yeah, you two are going to work together and make sweet football love, and we'll have a good team. That didn't work. So now you put Rand in charge. This team is worse than they were last year. And you think that I have to give Rand another year to prove that he is in fact worse than what it was before?
Yeah, but let me ask you this question, Jared. Okay, at the beginning of the season, were you excited about the stuff that he was doing?
No.
The stuff that he was doing, I was listening to people at the YMCA. I was listening to people at my job. Everybody was excited what he was doing. You need a top flight.
But the YMCA does not decide who should be the left tackle.
I'm not saying you're missing my point. I'm saying everybody was excited what he was doing. I'm not saying they make decisions, because look you need a top flight wide receiver. What did they do? They went to get Calvin Ridley. You need 2 shutdown corners. You get Snead and Woozier. Now that was bad. I still think that you should give him another year. I mean, what do? You go and you get another general manager. You still got to start from ground zero. So what's the difference?
Yeah, right.
You still
I want to start from ground zero with a general manager that might be good instead of a general manager that is.
Okay.
I think the returns are telling us that I won't say he's 100% bad. There's a chance that he could have been totally screwed by everybody else and Vrabel and Amy and. But it's probably more likely than not that he's not a good general manager.
Yeah, well, let me ask you this question, Jared. Okay, say you let him go and you bring in another general manager. What if they go 2-15? Do you fire him and start all over?
That's usually how this league works.
Oh, man, but I think give him another year. Give him another year and say, okay, you know what? I know this year. Let's chalk up this year. Okay, great. Now let's build this thing the correct way.
What lessons do you think he's learned from this year?
I think that one of the lessons learned is not bringing in veterans that have a history of getting hurt. I think that's the number one thing that he has to work on, because I understand everybody goes with the name Snead. Everybody's like, oh, he's a shutdown corner. Everybody hears a Woozy. Oh, my God, he's a shutdown corner. I think he needs to get away from the name and really bring in guys, younger guys that can play at a high level. And I think that that's the one thing he learned by not bringing in, not just a name, but bringing in guys that have a reputation of getting hurt. I think that's one thing that he learned.
So you think they should, go out and use the draft to get a guard in the first round or a run-stuffing DT who doesn't sack the quarterback in the second round?
They got to have. Here's what they think, and I agree with Derek Mason the whole time. You got to get some quality starters, some impact player starters, but you got to build this roster. You got to build depth, and we talked about this on a radio show on Sunday with our award-winning radio show. That if you look at 1999, if one guy went down in the receiver room or the defensive back room, there was so much depth. Now this year, you got guys that get hurt. There's no depth. So now if I'm the general manager, I'm going to get some quality starters, get some impact starters, but I'm going to build depth. So now if one of those guys go down, the contribution never stops.
Chris Sanders, as always, on the program and will be with us for the award-winning pregame show Sunday. Chris, great stuff.
Hey, appreciate you, brother. Love you, man. Bye.
Yep, love you too. Chris Sanders on the program. Tune in to 93.3 Totally Hits Nashville tonight for MTSU men's basketball. The Blue Raiders will take on Rhodes. Tip off at 6:30 with the pregame show beginning at 6. Coverage also available on the Totally Hits Nashville app and at totallyhitsnashville.com. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. You know I love Chris Sanders with all my heart. You know, he is probably one of the most caring and honest and supportive people you will ever meet in your life. And Chris Sanders thinks Rand Carthon deserves one more year. And again, I lump Carthon and Brinker together. I don't do this thing where it's like, you know, well, but Brinker, no, I don't do that. I also don't do this thing where we pretend that 2023 just magically didn't happen. They drafted Skoronski. That pick has been a bust. They drafted Levis. Jury's still out, but it's not looking good. They drafted Spears in the top 100. He never plays. So that's a bad draft class. They signed Andre Dillard. He sucked. They signed Arden Key. He's okay. They signed Sean Murphy Bunting. I mean, nothing special. DeAndre Hopkins was okay. Traded for Nick Folk. That was good. And then, of course, this past year with the money in free agency that hasn't panned out. And, you know, the tackle who's regressing a little bit at left tackle, but he's doing okay. And the big fat DT who doesn't sack the quarterback. That's what they have. And here's the difference between me and Chris's philosophy, and I think a lot of people out there's philosophy, and you can apply the same philosophy to Will Levis. It's not fair. That is the difference. People will tell you that it is not fair to change the administration of the Titans because, well, when Rand Carthon took the GM job, he was working with Mike Vrabel. He wasn't fully 100% in charge. But that's what he signed up to do. Like, it wasn't like there was some preconceived notion that Rand thought, I'm the chief in charge around here, and Mike Vrabel answers to me, and we're not collaborating and blah, blah, blah. You know, all the buzzwords that everybody put out there. That wasn't a surprise. That's what he signed up for. That's what he said he was going to do. Then this time last year, if you remember, all we were being told was everything is great between Rand Carthon and Mike Vrabel. TD got invited into the facility, did a sit down with both guys, and they both said everything is great. And then at the end of the year, Vrabel gets fired. So Rand technically gets a promotion, though, again, with how they moved Brinker up, I'm not totally sure what to make of all that. Rand technically gets a promotion and becomes the executive vice president, which I remember when Floyd was doing the show with us, he said that was a big deal. That in order to sign contracts in the NFL, you have to be the EVP. I don't know if that's true or not. That's just what he told me. But again, when it comes to this year, it was like, we'll show you guys. And there has been no improvement of this football team. They're horrible. They got 3 wins. They're favored to win on Sunday, but that doesn't really mean much to me. And so Chris says, well, it's not totally fair. Give him another year. And that's where I disagree. I think it's pretty obvious Rand's not a good general manager. That's just my opinion. And maybe he secretly is the best. But I have not seen a strategic line of thinking that gives me any hope that these guys know what they're doing, other than just throwing cash out there and saying, that'll be fine. Taking risks they shouldn't be taking. It'll be fine. Putting PT at right tackle. It'll be fine with L'Jarius Sneed and his injury history. And then I turn this to Levis. Because you can make the exact same argument for Levis, that it's not his fault. But again, the NFL, they don't care. The NFL is not the land of fair. The NFL is not the land of, you get to overturn every stone to make sure that you're not a good general manager and use every resource. Because the Titans are probably going to be able to spend about $100 million in cash this offseason. and they're probably going to have a top 5 pick. Well, I want somebody who might be a good general manager, or somebody like a Rick Spielman who's shown that they are a good general manager in the past to make that pick, as opposed to let's give him another chance and see if he's any good. That I have a hard time with. Because as easy as it is to say, give somebody else another year, give them a year, see where it goes. Do you guys realize how difficult it is to go from where we were 2 years ago when we would watch a Baltimore Philly game? Take the afternoon slate on Sunday. In fact, let's start at the witching hour. If people don't know what that means on Red Zone, the witching hour.
About 2:30.
2:30. When all the 1 o'clock games come to the end. If you go through the witching hour, because I was watching the Titans game, but I also had my phone and I was watching the Colts and the Patriots. And I was like, come on, Patriots. Then after that, I flipped to another game, and I forget who it was, Jacksonville and Houston. And I'm like, come on, Jacksonville. And then in the late window, instead of watching Baltimore, Philly, which I did watch, I was keeping an eye on Tampa Bay and Carolina. And I was like, come on, Carolina. Because where we used to be when the Titans were good, we'd watch Baltimore, Philly, rooting for Philly so that Baltimore would drop in the AFC and the Titans would go up. I'm watching Carolina, Tampa because I want Tampa to lose so that Carolina falls further behind the Titans in the draft order. That's where we are. And so either Rand has had the just worst misfortune that anybody could have over a 2-year period. Again, some of which was his own doing. When you take the job to work with Mike Vrabel, you can't then turn around and say, well, blame Mike Vrabel. You signed up to work with Mike Vrabel. But the results are worse, worse, worse. And I don't want to waste another year of my life watching games during the witching hour saying, come on, Carolina. I don't want to do that anymore. And I feel like this is the safest way out. And I'm not 100% convinced, because I don't think you can be 100% convinced, but I am convinced enough. I think they say in a civil trial, the preponderance of the evidence, it's you listen to their side, you listen to this person's side, you listen to that person's side. Whoever side you believe more, you vote for them. When it is a criminal case, it is beyond a shadow of a doubt, which means you better be sure that person committed that crime, or pretty damn sure that person committed that crime. I think I'm beyond a shadow of a doubt Rand Carthon's not a good general manager. So I don't want to waste another year of my life saying, come on, Carolina! Or taking a safety and moving him to corner, or taking a guard and moving him to center, or taking a tackle and moving him from one side. That's just me. But Chris thinks it's not fair and deserves another year. 615-737-1025. It's Stillman and Company, 1025 The Game.
Rand is a tremendous person as far as an evaluator and the relationships he has around the league. And we really wanted to allow him to flourish in that role. Rand brings in a lot of good people, and that's something that this organization can be proud of first and foremost. I do know we have the right GM. You know, Rand Carthon's going to do some great things. He and Brian Callahan just kind of getting this team together. There's a lot of excitement around it. You know, hope is a powerful thing. We're hopeful that the fan base sees that and is excited about what we're doing. This is where Rand Carthon is just masterful. He has these relationships with these players in a way that most of us in the building don't. We're just so aligned, he and I. And Rand talks about that he has this acronym FIT, fast, instinctive, and tough football players. And I love that. I was like, man, I love that. That's kind of an identity of the team that you want to build. Yeah, Rand's a big part of that. Rand's the one that's really connected with those players in a way that probably no one else has in the building.
Boy, I'll never forget that one. The Chad Brinker pumping Rand Carthon's tires. That was one of my all-time favorites. When I went crazy because Rand didn't go to the Senior Bowl, and then everyone was like, it's a good thing you didn't go to the Senior Bowl. Chad Brinker's at the Senior Bowl. He'll be fine. I love it. All right, Chris Sanders says he deserves another year. Your phones are lighting up. Let's go to him. Phone line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025. John in Hendersonville said, hey, Jared, John here. Look at the Commanders. They cleaned house and turned around the team in 1 year. This is a bad week for the it's not fair. John Robinson screwed everything up. Mike Vrabel. This is a bad week for that. Because the team you played, the Washington Commanders, changed their owner, their president, their GM, and their coach all between last year and this year. Now, I know the Titans aren't going to change their owner, but they changed it, and in 1 year, they're a better football team. And people will say that it's because of Jaden Daniels. And there was some truth to that. Jaden Daniels is a good player. But what nobody ever talks about is Frankie Louvu, Tyler Biotish, Nick Allegretti, Bobby Wagner. They don't talk about that. Noah Igubenagany. You know, again, Noah Igubenagany was a former first-round pick by the Dolphins. He's not a special player. But do you want to know where he was on Sunday for the Commanders? On the field. Your corners were not. Even though you had that super-duper AI Kellogg Business School that model that told you about all these injuries to save the owner a dollar or two. So, again, this is a bad week for that because the Commanders have turned their fortunes around by bringing in somebody that has an idea. And, again, we can sit there and blame Mike Vrabel all we want, but this really goes back to Amy because Amy wanted to make sure Vrabel was still the coach, and instead of keeping Vrabel as the coach and bringing a Vrabel lackey in to be GM, which if you're committed to Vrabel, that's probably in hindsight what she should have done. But instead of doing that, she was like, no, I'm going to shotgun marriage Vrabel and somebody else. And Adam Peters, who's the GM in Washington, he said, I'm not interested in that. I'm the GM. I want to be in charge of the team. And so this is what you get. One texter says, this is terrible. Same stuff every day. Not necessarily. We talked a lot about Levis yesterday. Lenny says, if you can fire Mike Mularkey after a winning season and going to the playoffs and winning a playoff game on the road, you can fire the general manager and coach of this team. That's the one thing that just drives me crazy is the standards. It's not fair for this group when they don't win. Whereas it was fair for the previous guys when they did win. Robinson won. You might not have liked it, but he won. He might have blown the A.J. Brown trade. He might have blown Isaiah Wilson. He might have blown Caleb Farley, but they won. Pretty funny. I did not mean to say that. But they won. He won 61% of his games. But that's not fair. I mean, that's fair, but what Rand, I don't even know what Rand's winning percentage is. I mean, it's what, 9-7 9-20, I think that's horrible. I asked ChatGPT like a month ago. I said, how many games would Rand Carthon and Chad Brinker have to win to get to 61%? They have to win 17 straight games in order to get to John Robinson's 61%. Chuck says, the only problem I have with Rand is he didn't blow up the team last summer and truly start from scratch. I felt the way about the Titans that I feel about the Preds. Dump everyone and start over. Anything of value should have been traded away last year. Would they have been terrible this year? Of course, but we'd at least have a direction. So I'm not sure I agree with that either. Like, I didn't think the Predators, after they made the playoffs, should dump everybody, and I didn't think the Titans after last year should have dumped. I wanted Derrick Henry to come back. I don't think this whole, like, oh, it would have been great if we had just torn it all down and said, all right, worry about next year. I don't think that would have really done anything for me. I mean, again, you still got to try to win. I mean, Washington, they tried to win right away. They didn't say tear it down to the studs. They went out and spent in free agency. They drafted a quarterback and played him right away. You could have just invested better, not what they did. One texter says, Rand doesn't even support the team fully by wearing those dumb T hats that aren't official team merchandise. Can you imagine the GM of the Yankees sitting down at a press conference while wearing a customized New York hat? That drives me crazy about Rand. I got to tell you, Ian and I were complaining about the T hats earlier today. Like, just during a commercial break. I don't mind if the players wear whatever they want to wear, because the players, they can market their own stuff. But the GM and the coach, they need to be wearing Titan stuff. It actually drives me crazy that Brian Callahan's always wearing an Oilers cap. And like, I get it. That's official team merch you can buy in the gift shop, which is a step above the T hat. But I want, I think the Oilers stuff should only be out on Oilers week. And then everything else should be Titan stuff for whatever that's worth. Not sure that's my biggest issue, but it's up there. So a lot of people have texted this in. Steve has this long text message and says, so by your logic, the Predators need to fire Barry Trotz as GM, spend a bunch of money for the worst team in the NHL. You seem to have a personal love for J-Rob or some deep-seated hatred for Rand for some reason. San Francisco wanted Lynch out after 1 year or two, and how did that turn out? Fact check this, but I'm pretty sure everybody in LA wanted Sneed out for giving away draft picks for 2 entire drafts. How did that turn out? Calm down and have some patience. First of all, when Les Snead gave away all of his draft picks, they won the Super Bowl. So I don't think a lot of people were upset about that. Secondly, John Lynch doesn't call the shots in San Francisco. Kyle Shanahan does. And there is starting to be some chatter about Shanahan in San Francisco. And I think it's crazy that they're even thinking of having chatter about Kyle Shanahan. Back to the Preds-Titans comparison. The Predators made the playoffs last year. Like, the Predators made the playoffs. It happened. Is this year going the way they wanted to? No. And I don't give you these excuses like some people do about, well, blame the players or nobody's more upset about it than Barry Trotz. I'm not doing that. It's Barry Trotz's job to make sure that this thing works right and that this team wins games. But this season isn't over. And there is hope for me that they can actually learn, because I've seen them build a good team like they did last year. To me, there's no hope that Rand Carthon is going to be able to turn this thing around outside of the same Andre Dillard, Daniel Brunskill, Peter Skoronsky, Tavondre Sweat moves that they've made. There's a huge difference there. And again, he brought up, this love I had for John Robinson. Let me say this, man. John Robinson, and I like John. I do. And I don't know how John feels about me, but I do know at a certain point in time, John thought I was an a-hole. He one time gave me the single worst compliment someone can receive. He said to me one time while he was general manager, he said, "Are you trying to become like Kaharski?" And I was like, no! It's not about, I mean, look, do I like Rand? I don't know Rand. But I care about winning. I like Andrew Burnett. And I'm about this close to wanting him fired. Like, again, what I care about is the winning. What I care about is the on Sundays not having to watch the Carolina Panthers and say, "Come on, Panthers, let's go," so that the Titans can get the 6th pick in the draft. That's the difference I have. Kind of want to run through some more of these, but I also we'll get to more of your phone. 615-737-1025. It's Stillman & Company, 1025 again.
Give an update on Traylon Burks.
I do. I should have mentioned this probably before, but he went on IR with an ACL injury initially. It was a loose ACL that wasn't fully torn, and so they had to go to see some doctors and some specialists, and some weeks went by after he went on IR, but he eventually had to have ACL surgery. So he is out for the year, not coming back, obviously, with that surgery. So went to IR, had some tests and some further work done, and had to have the surgery. So the surgery was, I don't want to speak out of turn on the date, but couple weeks back probably. But it was from the time he went to IR to when it happened was also a couple of weeks. So kind of got lost in the shuffle there on the IR board.
There you go. That was Brian Callahan talking about Traylon Burks out for the year with an ACL. So we're probably going to do a lot of talking about John Robinson either tomorrow or Friday as we approach the 2-year anniversary of John Robinson's firing, which was, I think, the single most irrational move I have ever seen the Titans make. And that includes, because I don't think it was like, I think they had a rationale for going with Jeff Fisher over Floyd Reese. I think that was a bad decision, but irrational is like off the cuff, just wild and crazy, reckless. That was the firing of Robinson. But the one thing that I will not defend, even though I understood what they were doing at the time and it just didn't work out. And these are the type of things that if a GM does and they don't work out, you get fired. And that is the A.J. Brown trade. Like, there is no mistaking it that it was a complete and total disaster. And I don't know what the money deal was. What I really believe, and I have told every single person I think involved in this decision that this is what I think happened. I think Tory Dandy, who is the agent for CAA, who represents A.J. Brown, I think Tory Dandy played John Robinson and got him to react. And so as much as I'll defend Robinson's record and some of the things he did, I don't dismiss the things he did poorly. I don't do this like the Skoronski thing where that's Vrabel's fault. I don't do that. Robinson blew it. And now we know that the Burks thing is pretty much officially done. And that's probably going to go down as the single worst decision in Titans history. Now, again, we can parse like, is it a worse decision to do that than to not take Mahomes with the 5th overall pick, that kind of, but again, like just the basic decision, I actually think trading A.J. Brown might be a single worse binary decision than picking Jeff Fisher over Floyd Reese. It's in that ballpark. And those are the kind of things that get a general manager fired for whatever that's worth. Phone lines, of course, we continue. One text says, how many times have the Titans fired major positions and found out the grass wasn't greener? That would be reason not to rush a mass firing. That same logic could be used to defend Ken Wisenhunt. Now, if you remember things around here when Wisenhunt got fired, he was 3-20. Things around here were so bad that I don't think a lot of people around here seriously questioned the move. But Peter King went crazy when the Titans got rid of Ken Wisenhunt. Say they didn't give him enough time. I mean, what are we doing? What are we doing? Like, how can we do that? How could we this? Oh, no, what are we? Oh, my God, I don't. And it's like, he had to go. This is where we are right now. This is rock bottom. Like, you play the Jags on Sunday. Nobody's going to the game. Nobody's going to watch the game. Nobody cares about the game. As much as we probably want to see the Titans win on Sunday, you need to lose because this is not a good draft. And not only do you need like the 4th pick in this draft, but you also need like the 34th pick in the 2nd round and not, 42. Those things matter. Like, I know it's crazy, but that's just, those things matter. And yet it's like, so bad. One texter says, who was the GM before Floyd? Let's talk about that. That's Mike Holovac. He's dead. Mike Holovac was like 75 years old when he retired in 1994. So I don't know what you want to talk about with Mike Holloway, but he's in the team's Ring of Honor, and he is no longer with us on this planet. We will keep him in our prayers. John says, one thing about the Commanders, they do have a promising young quarterback who is light years ahead of Levis. You have to have a QB that can get out of trouble, doesn't make stupid mistakes, and does the impossible to win games, and Levis is none of these things. I'll just say this, and Ian disagreed with me the other day. Flip Jaden Daniels and Levis on Sunday, and it wouldn't have made a difference. Would they have won by the exact same amount of points? I don't know. Would it have been a blowout? Yes. Would the Commanders have won? Yes. Jaden Daniels has a good team around him. He's throwing the ball to Terry McLaurin. Let's go to Trey, who's up next here on the program. Trey, thank you for calling and waiting. Go ahead.
Hey, buddy. How you doing today?
Good.
Hey, I love your show. I call in all the time. But, hey, I wanted to get your opinion. When they let Khalif Raymond go, how big of an impact was it for the team? And I don't think they recovered since then. And I just want to hear your opinion. Thank you, buddy.
Yeah, I think they recovered. They signed Chester Rogers, who for a couple of games wasn't that bad. You know, Rogers at times
fumbled
going
again.
back there to return the punts. You know, I got a little nervous with him returning the punts. But I don't, you know, A.J. Brown, yeah, that's something you haven't really recovered from. I think you can survive without Khalif. I'm a big Khalif Raymond guy, but my dad loved Khalif Raymond. I'll never forget, I went to a training camp practice during COVID in 2020, and I was like, you know, Khalif Raymond's looking pretty good out there. And boy, the old man laughed at me up and down, saying, he's got 9 balls. Ha, 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 ha. And Raymond's actually a solid player. But, I mean, at the same time, like, NWI was the guy who took that spot. And I think with all of our problems surrounding the Titans, I don't want to speak for everyone, but I think we can agree, NWI is not the problem. Although Khalif Raymond is on IR right now, and I saw that the Broncos waived Josh Reynolds, and I was wondering if
you know who
Detroit
picked him
would
up?
pick him.
Someone picked him
Jacksonville
up.
did.
Yep.
Jacksonville picked him up, which I'm surprised because what does Jacksonville need Josh Reynolds for?
Yeah, well, I think they're kind of banged up, and they did officially place Trevor Lawrence on IR.
The season-ending IR?
Not necessarily. I guess there's still a window if there's 5 games left. So technically he could come back for the finale, but doubtful.
Jordan in Nashville has a long rant into the text line. He says, it's not fair to fire Rand after this year, but that should be irrelevant. This is the NFL. That's normal. Where I disagree is that it seems unethical. While the moves haven't worked out because the players got injured due to age, I agree with Chris Sanders that the signings and a lot of the positions of need were directly addressed. What about right tackle, Jordan? And if the plan/thought process doesn't change after next year, then yeah, he should be fired. And again, it doesn't have to be fair, but it sends a bad signal to other potential qualified candidates if you react quickly and look like this consistently crazy owner that no one wants to be around, except for those who will say, I'll gladly take your money. I can run an entire football team, and maybe I'll win some games if I'm lucky. Also, I agree, watching other games and rooting for other bad teams to win isn't fun, but personally, I didn't think 2022, even before Robinson was fired, was a fun year. I did. I mean, I was at Lambeau Field. What was one of my greatest memories is now probably one of my saddest memories for a bunch of different reasons. But I was at Lambeau Field when the Green Bay Packers and Aaron Rodgers got beat by the Tennessee Titans, and the Titans were 7-3 in 2022. And I remember walking 2 miles in the snow back to the hotel and thinking to myself, boy, this team is fun. And then it all went to crap. I also, as far as the how will it look crew, Joe Rex Road, I don't do the whole, it'll look bad. Yeah, it looked bad when the 49ers fired Chip Kelly after 1 year. They hired Shanahan. I think they're happy with that. 615-737-1025 is our phone number, 615-737-1025 here on the program. I do have a college football playoff thought. I told you something was going to happen yesterday. It did. We'll do it next. Stillman & Company, 1025 The Game.
At the heart of so much of this is the fact that conference realignment has bulked up the Big Ten and the SEC. And without divisions in all of these leagues now, the inequity that has already and always existed has been exacerbated. And it's on full display right now when you have teams like Indiana that don't play Penn State or Oregon during the regular season.
That was Heather Dinich on ESPN talking about the latest college football playoff rankings. And I just got one big takeaway because they didn't do anything egregiously crazy. You know, it wasn't like number 7, Miami. And it's like, what? They didn't do that. But I do know a lot of Tennessee fans are upset because if the playoff were today, the Vols would be headed to Ohio State, to the Horseshoe at Ohio Stadium in Columbus. They get a home game after that crap performance on Saturday. Meanwhile, the Vols weathered the storm from Vandy. Nico looked great, and Tennessee took care of business against a quality opponent in Vanderbilt because apparently they're a quality opponent for Texas and a quality opponent that beat Alabama. And yet Tennessee has to go on the road. Now, look, there can be any argument because the committee has all these different cards they can play. It's almost like 3-card Monty. You don't know which one it is, which one they're going to throw at you. Margin of victory, strength of schedule, we don't do the how they played last week, even though shouldn't that matter a little bit? But again, they operate on their own. The one thing the committee, I believe, has done consistently, and they did this last night, from the first college football playoff ever played to last night. So all the way in 2014, 10 years ago, they've always taken the brand. That's the one thing that seems to matter, the brand. And when you do things subjectively, which is what the college football playoff is, you're always going to have bias seep through the cracks. In the case of the rankings yesterday, there are 2 moments of what I think are pure bias. Number 1, Ohio State ahead of Tennessee. Ohio State's the bigger brand. Tennessee is a big brand in college football, but they're not Ohio State. Ohio State is the number 1 television draw, period. The number 1 game. It used to be Notre Dame. It's not anymore. It's Ohio State. The number 1 game every year is Ohio State, Michigan. This year, it dropped to number 2 for the year, behind Georgia, Texas, simply because Michigan sucks so bad. But Ohio State's the bigger brand. They think Buckeyes, they think good. The only real argument for Ohio State ahead of Tennessee is that Ohio State lost by 1 point to Oregon and Georgia beat Tennessee by a couple of touchdowns. But as far as I watched them both play, Tennessee on Saturday, that's a better football team. But again, bigger brand. And then there's Alabama. Now, Alabama has made the college football playoff in a year in which they didn't even win the SEC West in 2017. They've made the college football playoff in a year in which they lost at home and got smoked by Texas last year. And Alabama with 3 losses, including one to Vanderbilt, getting housed by Oklahoma. Alabama's in the playoff over Ole Miss. And I really don't think, again, it's close because of the losses. And I have no sympathy for a team like Ole Miss because they lost to Kentucky. And it's like one of my best buddies that played in the major leagues for a little bit. He said the one thing they used to say in the minor leagues was, don't like it, play better. You don't like it in A-ball having to eat peanut butter and jelly? Well, why don't you play better and you get sent to AAA and they'll feed you better? Don't like it? Play better. Oh, don't like sharing a room? Get to the big leagues. And then you get your own room on the road. Don't like it? Play better. It's kind of their motto. And I feel that way too. Miami, don't like it? Play better. Don't lose to Syracuse. But Alabama shouldn't be in the playoff. And Alabama's only in because of the brand. And when you have TV pulling the strings, that's what's going to happen. The NFL dictates what matchups end up on TV in the playoffs based off formulas. That way, a smaller market like Cincinnati can't get edged in favor of a more popular team or a larger market like Pittsburgh or Houston. That's why. But we don't do that in college football. And so, again, the one thing that's true from the first college football playoff on when Ohio State got in over Baylor and TCU, and they shouldn't have, the committee cares about the brand. The committee cares about the brand. They won't say they care about the TV ratings, but I can tell you, Alabama, Notre Dame, that is a much better game on TV than SMU or Clemson or because it's Alabama. And I find that to be incredibly disheartening. And that's why I believe Ohio State is ahead of Tennessee, because of the brand. Not because they say, well, that's the brand. It's this bias they have that makes them think, oh, well, they must be better because they're Ohio State. That's what I believe. And I do think that there is a huge gap between playing the game at Neyland Stadium and playing the game at Ohio Stadium. 615-737-1025. Joe Rexroad, Caroline Fenton, an early edition because the Preds are on at 5:30 today. An early edition of Jared versus Joe is next. Stillman and Company, 102.5 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook Live. We are live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. A little bit earlier because the Preds are in Toronto trying to save their season today. So 4 o'clock means it's time for Jared versus Joe. Caroline is here. Hello, Caroline.
Hello, how we doing?
I'm outstanding. I was very disappointed. Now, I didn't listen to all of it, but I did not hear Joe Rexroad today chastise Paul Kaharski for his disingenuous Floyd Reese comments from a couple weeks ago after posting his 25th anniversary team and having almost 20% of the players be from Floyd's last 3 seasons, which he said were as bad as Rand Carthon's. So I was a little disappointed in Robbie and Joe on that front. But Joe is here for Jared versus Joe. Hello, Joe.
Yeah, honestly, I'm not even hip to his team, but I did chastise him the day he said that stuff. I hope you heard that.
Oh, okay. Well, at least there's that. I think it's honestly one of the most disingenuous takes I've ever heard. And I think it's about me and not about Floyd, but we'll leave that in the past. Time now for Jared versus Joe.
Jared Stillman versus Joe Rexroad. Now on Stillman and Company.
On ESPN
102.5 The Game.
Jared versus Joe is presented by Pella Windows and Doors of Nashville. Caroline.
I don't know why I have a sneaking suspicion that you're not going to leave that in the past. I just have a feeling that this is probably going to come up a whole lot in the future, but I digress. And we will get into Jared versus Joe. Jared, I'll start with you. Has Will Levis done enough to be the Titans quarterback in 2025?
Okay. No. Will Levis has not earned the right to be the starting quarterback of the Tennessee Titans in 2025, but that doesn't mean that he might not be the best option. So, again, like I saw Dane Brugler at The Athletic, Joe's colleague, put out a mock draft today, and he's got Ward and Sanders at 2 and 3, and you're picking at 7. So there may not be a quarterback to pick. And then when it comes to free agency, Minnesota might tag Sam Darnold, trade him somewhere else. Sam Darnold might go somewhere else. You know, there may be, I don't know what the outlook will be of, okay, Will Levis or Daniel Jones, Will Levis or Mac Jones, Will Levis or Justin Fields. Like, that's probably what we're looking at right now. And so because of that, I'm not convinced that I'd rather go with Justin Fields and change the offense and everything else to try Justin Fields out at quarterback as opposed to running it back with Levis. But as far as earning the job, the way that, say, Josh Allen has the job next year in Buffalo, or maybe even the way Russell Wilson probably has the job next year in Pittsburgh, I'm not ready to say that Will Levis has earned the job for 2025.
I generally agree with all that. He hasn't earned the right to be the starter next year. He's helping himself lately. He's playing better. I think if he can be around the same level the rest of the year that he's been the past 4 games, then, again, if you don't have a great alternative, you can't get one of the quarterbacks you love in the draft. If you even love any of them, you can't sign someone in free agency or get a trade or whatever that you're like, this is the guy. Well, then Will Levis makes sense next year while you try to build things up and make your team better. So, I think going the year, I said, I think he'll probably be pretty good and enough to get the job next year, but not to be clearly the franchise quarterback. And I think we may be headed for that now. A month ago, I would have said we're not headed for that. We're headed for he's flamed out, but obviously he's figured some things out here.
Here's the problem, though. And I said this yesterday at the start of the show, he was the highest graded player according to Pro Football Focus on Sunday for the Titans. This team is so bad that it's like, I don't really know how you judge the quarterback, but at the same time, that's what they get paid to do. Like, if they say, well, it's not fair to judge, because Adam in Portland has started crying over the fact that it's not fair to judge Levis based on how bad the team is. And I keep responding by saying that it's not, the NFL's not fair. Life is not fair. And so, yeah, it's not fair that Will Levis has no right tackle and his left guard stinks and all of that. But at the same time, like, if you're the general manager and you're like, well, it's not fair, let's run him back out there, and Levis isn't the guy, you get fired next year. Like, so that's what's hard for me is like, is Levis better than he was at the beginning of the year? Yeah. Is Levis behind the 8 ball because the team sucks? Yeah. But that also doesn't lead me to say, well, is Levis good? Well, let's just assume yes, because everything else is bad, and I can't do that.
No, and I'm not assuming that either. I will say in the last game, the one thing that counts against him in terms of circumstances, 28-0, and so you figure you're seeing softer coverage the rest of the day. But he was under, I thought, incredible duress. I thought he got rid of the ball a lot faster consistently to avoid sacks in this game. And I mean, there were a legitimate 6 drops too, and some really good throws. So I mean, I thought, again, the circumstance makes it a little cloudy, but his actual performance, given these unfair circumstances, was pretty good, pretty encouraging. So, I mean, let's just see if he can keep doing it. But it's that has to happen, and then it's of course the Titans have to be head on a swivel and trying to find a better solution. It's just, I don't know that they will.
By the way, Pro Football Focus gave Levis a smidge of a higher grade than Jaden Daniels. And Derek was going off about Will Levis and how he sucks. And I sent in that Levis's PFF grade was better and had more big-time throws and more drops and less pressure to sacks. And Derek went crazy. Are you going to go crazy if I mention that?
Well, I mean, I just PFF. I've been consistent on PFF. It's count up the coverages for me. You can count up pressures and stuff like that. These grades are comical, but I know you like them when they suit your argument. In the
I would
moment.
just say this is the hard part: is that I don't know what Will Levis looks like throwing to Terry McLaurin because Will Levis doesn't have Terry McLaurin. That's just what it is, and people have a hard time understanding that. You have to make up in your mind whether or not he could throw the ball to Terry McLaurin or not. Caroline, what's next?
It also begs the question about Will Levis. Is there actually progress being made, or is it just he's better than awful? It's all relative there. Okay, Joe, you go first.
Progress?
Say that again.
Isn't that the progress?
Yeah, but there's
that would
a difference
be progress.
It is progress, yes, but deserving of being the quarterback next year or better than horrible?
True.
2 different questions. Joe, you go first. So Fox 17 put out a poll, and 84% of Titans fans said that they believe that the team needs to make leadership changes. How should Amy Adams-Strunk feel about that poll?
Okay. Well, I think that Amy Adams-Strunk should be, attentive to fans and media, but also, I mean, look, we were talking about Floyd. I'll go to one of my favorite Floydisms, you listen to the fans, you'll be sitting with them soon. That's not true of her, but I guess she'll be sitting above them in a suite. But, the idea being that, you got to be careful about, making that your gospel. I mean, do I think she should ignore the feedback she gets from fans and media? No. But also, she really, as we've talked about many times, needs to be operating from a position of being informed and being confident that she has the right leadership. If she's not, then make the change. Don't make the change because a Fox poll had 84% of the people. I mean, how many respondents are we talking here?
Who knows, Joe? Stop complaining about it.
Well, no, I'm not complaining. I'm just saying, are we talking 19 people? 200? What are we talking here?
I mean, I think Fox 17 is reputable enough to say, okay, they probably conducted a fair poll.
Okay. I mean, that's fine. What did they conducted it on the newscast and had people
on Twitter.
On Twitter.
Online?
There were
Just tweeted it out.
762 votes.
Okay. All right. That's not nothing. I mean, look, I think the way she should take it is, oh yeah, we suck again. I mean, when you suck, then again, there are a lot of people right now who are. I'm hearing it more and more. Oh, Vrabel. Oh man, sure wish we had Vrabel. Vrabel was good. He was a year ago when they sucked for a second straight year. I think some of those people were calling for Vrabel to be fired. So I mean, it's when you're in the moment, and again, the suckitude is now moving into a third calendar year. We're talking, let's see, we talked about this today on the show. 9-27, I believe. 9-25 since John Robinson was fired, but that means 9-27 in the last 36 games. I mean, I would expect fan feedback to be mostly negative, and I understand that.
It's funny that what Joe said, because I do agree from this standpoint. 2 years ago on Friday will be the day that she hauled off and fired John Robinson. And I think I think I remember everybody in this room correctly. We all disagreed with the decision when it was made, when it happened, right? Like when she fired him on Tuesday, we were all like, I don't think that's a very good idea. Am I wrong about that?
No. I mean, the only thing you're misremembering is that you spent 2 months saying there must be some crazy thing that happened on the plane from Green Bay.
That's because it was so stupid when it happened that there had to be some sort of an explanation. And the one thing I will say is that when that happened, and Caroline, maybe I'm misremembering this. If I am, you stop me right here. I felt like the fan reaction to Amy's decision to fire John Robinson, which has been an unmitigated disaster. Again, Joe mentioned the record 9-25 since it happened. But the fan reaction was, yeah! Amy, she put her foot down. She showed courage and leadership and etc. And that decision. Now, look, there have been subsequent decisions that have been equally as bad, if not terrible. But that decision, I really believe, is because sometimes I think the Titans listen to the fans too much. And so I'm not a Rand Carthon guy. You know that. You guys know I believe leadership changes should be a coming. But I don't think Amy should make them because the fans say it. I think Amy needs to get somebody that knows football, to tell her, hey, should you make leadership changes? Not Fox 17's poll. And I think what got her into this mess was the Leroy Jenkins moment of firing John Robinson and thinking that she could figure it out herself. And so I agree with Joe. Don't listen to the fans, Amy. Listen to somebody who knows ball. And they will tell you probably what I believe, since I don't think I know ball, but I think I know enough. They will tell you what I believe, which is you still need to make changes.
I will defend the fans a little bit. I think some people were like that, but I think there was still a pretty healthy segment of the fan base that was like, why the heck in season is this necessary? Right. So, I mean, but yeah, there was too much celebrating. And as I said at the time, it's like, listen, it's a fair discussion to fire him at the end of the year. It's fair. It's a fair evaluation. I still probably wouldn't have, but like, that was a fair discussion to have, but doing it in season. I mean, I still don't believe the Jacksonville Jaguars would have that random division title if not for that move.
More Jared versus Joe next.
Jared Stillman versus Joe Rexroad. Now on Stillman and Company.
On ESPN
102.5 The Game.
Jared versus Joe is presented by Pella Windows and Doors of Nashville. Caroline, go.
Okay, Jared, you go first. So last night, the college football playoff rankings came out. Tennessee was at 7, Ohio State at 6 over them. Did the committee get it right or wrong in putting Ohio State over Tennessee?
So I've realized something about the committee. The committee has so many little rules that they can just throw down at any given moment that it's like, well, why would we have that? Well, this rule is something the committee is allowed to go by. But the one thing that kind of feels constant, whether it's Ohio State over TCU and Baylor the first year, or Alabama over Florida State last year, or Alabama when they didn't even win the SEC West in 2017, it kind of feels to me like the college football playoff gets wooed by the brand. I think, again, it's almost splitting hairs. They both have a bad loss. Tennessee lost to Arkansas, and Ohio State lost to Michigan. Now, the Michigan game was on Saturday, and Nico played great ball on Saturday against UT, but the committee will throw down their rule that we don't look at, who's playing well of late, which is one of their favorite things to go to. Sorry, South Carolina. So they can say that. They each have a loss against a top team. Ohio State's was by 1 point, and Tennessee's was by a couple of touchdowns. So you could argue that. But again, I watched them both play at the exact same time on the multi-viewer on YouTube TV on Saturday, and I do not believe that Ohio State would be deserving of playing a playoff game at home against UT. I don't. I think Tennessee is the better team, and I think Tennessee has, in my opinion, a better win against Alabama because I think Penn State is overrated. And so I just, again, I see what the committee's doing, and they're going to point to Indiana, and they're going to point to, and I don't even know what the back end of the top 25 poll is, but they always manipulate the back end of the top 25 poll so the chair can get on there and say, well, they have wins over 4 top 25 teams, and one of them's like number 24. And
they manipulate it. Yeah, that's what they do.
I hate when they do that. Again, I think it's the brand. I think if Tennessee was Alabama, Tennessee be ahead. And so I think the brand of Ohio State is the hair that is being split here, whereas the hair I would split is Ohio State lost at home and Tennessee lost at Arkansas if those two teams play. Now, again, it could change because Penn State could beat Oregon and that could, flummox whatever. But if everything holds, that game should be at Neyland Stadium.
I love when people use the brand argument, like Tennessee's not a massive brand.
But it's not Ohio State. Ohio State's the number one brand on TV.
Ohio State's the number one brand on TV. It's not like Tennessee is some podunk, rinky-dink little program. Tennessee's one of the biggest programs and the biggest brands in college football.
Yeah, but they're not the Cowboys.
The committee got it right. The committee got it right because, look, first of all, you have to go with the rankings. So you can say what you want about Indiana or Penn State, but the bottom line is Ohio State won at Penn State, and they beat Indiana. Those two teams are both ranked higher than Alabama. And by the way, I just watched Alabama lose 24-3 at freaking Oklahoma, and my God, it's not like they looked great against Auburn this last week either. So Alabama's a 3-loss team. That's Tennessee's best win. Still a good win. It's a ranked team. It's a team in the field, but Ohio State has 2 wins over teams higher ranked, and the losses, to me, pretty much cancel out. Michigan, I would agree that Michigan, that was maybe the most shocking loss in that rivalry or result in that rivalry, losing at home, and they looked terrible. They completely choked and just turtled. Tennessee losing at Arkansas. And then the other games are Tennessee losing by 2 touchdowns at Georgia, or Ohio State losing in the last second by a couple points at the number 1 unbeaten Oregon. I don't think this is like some robbery that's a brand name thing. It's the correct decision.
I also think, even though I gave Tennessee credit for the Alabama thing, I also think that Alabama being in might be a little bit of the brand as well.
Might be, except I prefer Ole Miss by a smidge, but it's very close. But Alabama, Ole Miss, very close. But I prefer Alabama, Ole Miss, and South Carolina, all 9-3 teams over Miami. I was pleasantly surprised that they bounced Miami. Miami is a fraudulent team. They've been lucky as hell to not be 7-5 right now. And
can we all agree on something, which is
with no good wins?
if you don't make it into the 12-team playoff, like, I got no sympathy for you. Like, Miami,
playing the
you should have
world's tiniest violin for anyone at 13, 14, and 15. Just don't lose 3 games.
You lost to Syracuse. Like, go home. Like,
and Georgia Tech.
I don't want to hear it. I don't want from the like, and that goes for Tennessee too. Like, at the end of the day, I think Tennessee should be should be ahead of Ohio State. But like, don't lose to Arkansas. Like, you did that to yourself. So I had sympathy for Florida State last year. You don't lose a game and you don't get put in. I got no sympathy for Ole Miss. Got a little sympathy for South Carolina because they got hot at the end, but I really have no sympathy. Caroline, quickly, what's our last one?
Okay, Joe. So Adam Vingan is hell-bent on firing Andrew Burnett. Is he right or wrong?
God, I mean, I first of all, I haven't heard all of it, but Vingan, I mean, my God, does Vingan love some fired hockey coaches? Does he love him firing some hockey coaches? No, look, at this point, I don't think I would not do it. I mean, my goodness, we're talking about an atrocious 2 months of hockey. And I get what this league is. This league is a fire the coach is the only solution league. And it's why it's the most firing coach league that there is in this country. But, I mean, we're not even 2 months in. We're talking about a guy who was right there for the Jack Adams, a promising young coach, and it's gone sideways. And look, at some point, he will be this. He'll be the solution. He'll be what Barry Trotz has to do. But at this moment, no, I would not do that. I mean, I think he's got to get more time to try to figure this out. And I mean, a lot of what I think we're seeing is aging veterans who Barry Trotz, hey, I celebrated the signings when they happened. Like, I'm sure you guys did. Maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like it was pretty widely celebrated in town. But it looks to me like we're looking at a bunch of aging veterans who the Preds have got at the wrong time and just don't mesh well together. And yes, Brunette has to figure it out, but I mean, I'm looking more at some of these guys who have produced all they have in this league and aren't doing so now than I am him.
I'll put it to you like this. I wouldn't fire the coach, but I don't think Adam's wrong about anything he said. You know, this team is completely underachieving. What's happened this year is unacceptable. The players that were on the team that were playing better last year, they're playing worse. The guys that they brought in aren't playing well. They have the most bench minors in the NHL. That is, in my opinion, a coaching stat. When you know, and again, they're losing games the exact same way. You know, 3 straight overtime losses to a team, the Flyers, on their third goalie who stink. And then you do the same thing to Tampa. Something's not right. And in this league, the solution is when you sign guys to contracts and it doesn't work, the solution is to fire the coach. Jim Montgomery had done more for the Boston Bruins than Andrew Burnett had for the Predators, and he got fired. And so it's crazy for me to say I wouldn't fire the coach because I think Burnett's a good coach, and I want to give him an opportunity to coach out of this. Trotz said, you know, he's giving the team till Christmas, and then he's bringing the young guys up. Said it yesterday on the program. I want to give Burnett the shot to coach out of this or coach the team to the number 1 pick and then switcheroo, you know, because if you get the number 1 pick, you got to go. But I don't disagree with anything Adam said. And if people that want to fire the coach, I understand where you're coming from. And I think it is a completely valid opinion, like a truly fair opinion. And again, I don't think anything Adam said, you know, whether it's the point production over the last 10 years, because Willie accused him of cherry picking coach firings. And so he went and had NHL stats and info look up the last 10 years of coach firings. It would be, if you really believe in this season and you believe in the historical precedents, it would behoove them to make that move. So I don't disagree with Adam at all, even though I wouldn't do it. Caroline, who wins this week?
Well, a whole lot of agreeing today. Awfully civil.
Sure.
Feels a little bit strange. But yeah, I would agree that I think Adam is incredibly fair in that take. I wouldn't do it today. I wouldn't do it anytime soon, but I don't disagree with anything that Adam has said. Has Will Levis done enough to be the Titans quarterback in 2025? No, but he might be. The poll, yeah, Amy Adams Strong, do be listening to polls on Twitter. We'll be doing all that. The college football playoff. I don't want to hear this whining about Tennessee being behind Ohio State. Ohio State has a better loss than Tennessee has by 1 point on the road against an unbeaten Oregon team. And Tennessee went to overtime with Florida. They trailed Kentucky at the half. You want to host a playoff game? Then beat Arkansas. It's just proven to not be that hard to beat Arkansas this season. So Joe wins.
Disappointing.
I think Jared should win. Jared, I'd like you to take the win. Take the win, buddy.
No. I'm think I'm working off of 2 or 3 in a row. So I feel like.
Are you sure it wasn't
There it
4
is.
or 5? It might be 4 or 5.
I mean, I just, I'm not going to be one of these people that says they win all the time. I just win most of the time. Guys, thank you very, very much for an early Jared versus Joe. Stillman and Company continues 102.5 The Game.
when we look at how he's played over the past 4 weeks versus the beginning of the season, are we maybe making more of the progress that Will Levis has made over the past 4 weeks because of just how bad he was to start the season?
Probably, because I think that we got to think about like what the expectations were coming into the year, right? Like the expectations coming into the year, like most teams in every city is, okay, like, are we going to play well enough to, go to the playoffs? Like, are we going to play well enough to, feel like we have a quarterback that we want to build around? So, I think that was the feeling in the beginning part of the season. And then obviously when it didn't go well, the initial reaction was definitely like, hey, like this won't work. It's not going to happen this way. And so with that, you then say, okay, like how do you reevaluate him? I think last week we talked about, like, let's say he continues to play on this trajectory through the rest of the season. Does he enter into the year next year as the presumed starter? Like, I don't think he does. So I think that's a drastic difference from, hey, he's going to be the starting quarterback and everyone's going to feel, good about building around him, for the future.
There you go. That was Tim Hasselbeck on the Midday Show. So, by the way, I think I unjustly lost Jared versus Joe, but that's a different discussion for a different day. One texter into the text line says, if Levis plays the way he has played the last 4 games, he deserves. You hear that, Ian? Deserves to be the quarterback in 2025.
Okay.
You know what's crazy? They're 1-3. They're 1-3 in the last 4 games that they've played. And this goes back to what Caroline said, which is how much of this is, hey, Will Levis is getting better and we're happy about it, and how much of this is, but still not good enough to be a starting NFL quarterback. And so I'm like, okay, let's run some numbers here, because I do wonder how we feel about these whole 4-game sample sizes and everything else, which again, Levis has certainly been a lot better than he was at the beginning of the year. But over the last 4 games, he's throwing for 240 yards a game. Again, that's not terrible, but if we're looking at these 4 games to prove that he's the guy, it's hard for me to get there. Over those 4 games that the Titans are 1-3, Will Levis is completing 18 passes a game and attempting 29. The 18 I like, but the 29, not a huge fan of. By the way, this also probably goes back to the completion percentage thing. Remember when Brian Callahan was really big about completion percentage? When he was like, well, Levis's completion percentage is up, even though they weren't throwing the ball down the field at all. Levis's completion percentage is down to basically 62% over those 4 games. And I think that's better than when he was 68% earlier in the year, but wasn't throwing anything down the field. Levis has 7 touchdowns, 2 picks. That's not bad. 5.5 sacks a game. That can't exist, but can't totally blame him. 8.35 yards per attempt. Not bad. And he's fumbling it once a game. He's got 3 fumbles over those 4 games. But again, they're 1-3. Now, this is where the big bucks come in. This is where a general manager gets paid, is to determine, is Will Levis really a solid NFL quarterback, throwing 8 yards per attempt, 61%, not bad, 7 touchdowns, 2 picks, 100 quarterback rating, and that a better offensive line would make the difference? Or do you look at it and say, no, I need somebody that goes out there and wins games for my team? And that's where the money, that's where these guys' jobs, if they keep their jobs and they come back as general manager and coach and everything, that's where these guys will make or break their careers. And I will just tell you that those numbers are solid, but they're not perfect. And when I'm talking about, hey, what's good enough to earn the job, I'm talking about guys where you look at it and you're like, Jaden Daniels will be their quarterback next year. Josh Allen will be their quarterback next year. How many teams across the league can you say, okay, this guy will be the quarterback for that team next year? There's one other thing I do want to kind of just touch on here. And Ian, I think people are going to be upset that I say this because I don't know Ramon Foster very well, but what I do know, I do like. Again, he works for the other radio station. I know he played at UT. I know he plays at the Steelers. I know he's a good guy. Other than that, couldn't tell you much. But did you see, Ian, this report about Azeez Al-Shaair?
And his appeal.
So Ramon Foster will be hearing Azeez Al-Shaair's appeal today. And that's part of a joint program that the NFL and the NFLPA have put together where they come up with these mutually agreed upon people. And again, I don't know Ramon Foster, but every sense I have is that he's a guy of integrity. So I'm not knocking that by any stretch of the imagination. But he works for the Titans. Like, he is on the Titans radio broadcast. Mike Keith works for the Titans. Jim Wyatt works for the Titans. Dave McGinnis works for the Titans. Like, they are employed by a rival. Is having his appeal heard by somebody who works for the Titans. And if you want to tell me that Titans radio is different than the Titans, you're wrong. That is a branch of the Tennessee Titans. Now, there is a difference between hosting a talk show on that station that has the games and being employed by the Titans, but there is not a difference between being part of the Titans radio crew and being a Titans employee. Am I the only one who thinks that's a little fakakta? That thinks
it's a little weird.
Hold on now. Like, again, do I think Ramon Foster, like, this Titan season's lost anyways, so who cares? And it's not like they play the Titans in that 3-game period that Azeez would be suspended, I don't think. But am I the only person that is like, if you're going to be a neutral arbitrator for the NFL, you cannot be getting a paycheck from that team's division rival? Am I the only person on the planet that's thought that? Again, this has nothing to do with Ramon Foster, but it has everything to do with the system. He works for the Titans. Imagine this. Because again, I don't know who the people appointed are or whatever. But let's say that Kenneth Murray, let's say the Titans were good. Kenneth Murray gets suspended. And it is the NFL suspends him, and it's ridiculous. And we've seen some ridiculous suspension. Brady Deflategate. It's ridiculous. And we think it's awful, and we think it's this, and we think it's, and he gets 3 games. And they're getting ready to play Ian Pickett.
Atlanta.
They're getting ready to play Atlanta. And Matt Ryan is the arbitrator that will decide whether or not, well, see, even that's not fair because Matt Ryan doesn't work for the Falcons. I mean, it has to be somebody who works for the Falcons. Whoever calls their games.
Tony Baselli,
Like,
Jacksonville.
Yeah, he calls their games.
There you
Tony
go.
Baselli is hearing it. Am I the only person that has a problem with that? Am I the only person in the world that thinks like, yo, man, if you're going to be like a joint arbitrator to decide like legitimate league matters, and I don't care about Azeez, but if you're going to be somebody that does that, you can't work for a team in the league. You can't have somebody working for the Ravens deciding on somebody from the Seahawks' suspension. You just can't do that. And apparently when I saw Adam Schefter tweet out about Ramon Foster, what does Adam Schefter tweet about Ramon Foster? I'm like, he's hearing the suspension? Like the same guy that takes phone calls? Really? That's on the Titans radio broadcast? He's hearing a suspension, like an actual league? Really? So, Again, that's their business, not mine. 615-737-1025. You know if the shoe was on the other foot. And if the Titans had a player who was being heard by somebody on the Texans radio broadcast, you people would be going freaking bananas, and you know it. But whatever. Fitz will join us up next on the program. Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. I love Hiller. They are great. They take great care of my home. They can do the same for you. Hiller's Cash for the Holidays promotion is back, and they're giving away cash for the holidays with select purchases. Get a $500 Visa gift card when you buy select new HVAC systems or a new whole home generator, or get a $250 Visa gift card when you buy a new tankless water heater. These deals are only available until the end of the year, so schedule today by visiting happyhiller.com. Take advantage of Hiller's $99 drain cleaning this month, too. There's no better time to take care of your home before the holiday guests arrive. And make sure your systems are in great shape and taking advantage of free cash at the same time. That's Hiller Plumbing, Heating, Cooling, and Electrical. Proud supporters of the Preds, the Vols, and Vandy. Hiller. Call the Happy Face Truck today. Stillman and company, it should be noted that the Jacksonville Jags have put Trevor Lawrence on the season-ending IR. Again, we usually don't preview Jacksonville games for 3 days leading into it, and certainly we're not going to do that now when both teams are freaking awful. But let me just say this, if I may for a second. I'm actually kind of fascinated to see what Mac Jones looks like on Sunday. I'm not going to lie. Because, again, everybody keeps telling me that when it comes to Will Levis, that, these last 4 games, they have been phenomenal. Levis has been great. This has been awesome. This has been that. This has been, and it's like, it's been fine. But can it be better? Again, they're 1-3 in those games. Some of them not Levis's fault. This offensive line, you can't put on Levis. But the one game they won, he threw a pick 6. And you can't throw pick 6s and win in the NFL. You just can't do it. So, again, I'm a little fascinated because when it comes to Mac Jones will be out there on Sunday. Jason Fitz joins us now on the program from Yahoo Sports and Fox Sports Radio. So, Fitz, let's start there. Will Levis has had a nice little run here for 4 games. They're 1-3, but his quarterback rating's over 100. He's thrown 7 touchdowns, 2 picks. And the question is now, okay, is he the quarterback next year or not? And I'm more of who else is out there first? How do you see it?
Yeah, this is a terrible draft class coming up. I just got to stress that for everybody. There are going to be teams overreaching. I still think Shedeur and Cam Ward go in the top 5, but in a normal draft, they would go in the, top 20 range. So this is not the draft to need a quarterback. So is Will Levis back? Yeah. Is Will Levis the answer? No. And this is look, I'd love to give a beacon of light in a dark, dark world to Titans fans in general. But here's the thing I would just say. Watch Will Levis and then just ask yourself, is Will Levis ready to compete with Patrick Mahomes? Because if the real goal is to win Super Bowls, you either got to have a Will Levis or you got to have a Josh Allen or you got to have a Joe Burrow or you got to have a Lamar Jackson. I know the Bengals are ruining Joe Burrow. I get it. But, at the end of the day, even Trevor Lawrence was supposed to be, can't miss. And now we're looking around saying, man, was Trevor Lawrence really worth $55 million? You think Trevor Lawrence is on the same level as Patrick Mahomes? The answer to that is clearly no. So will Levis win him some games? Sure. Great. And if your goal is to have an okay quarterback for the next 10 years, then huzzah. Congratulations. Let's celebrate that. If your goal is to have the guy that can take down Mahomes, I don't believe that that's Will Levis in any way, shape, or form.
Do you believe that there's a quarterback out there that can be a reclamation project a la Russell Wilson this year, what we saw Ryan Tannehill when he was here, etc.?
Not really. I think part of what we have to expect, though, is that sometimes familiarity is a really good situation for quarterbacks to go into language-wise. So, Sam Darnold having the success he's having in Kevin O'Connell's offense with the Vikings makes a little bit of sense because he spent a couple of years getting to know that offense, those systems, and the way that it all works. So I think when we look at reclamation projects, sometimes it's a guy that's been in the league for a long time that's not being asked to translate a lot of things. So, are there bridge quarterbacks out there? Look, is Derek Carr going to be somewhere other than New Orleans? Do you feel excited about that? That's the sort of is Jameis Winston what we're excited about? Those are the real answers we're talking about. And I think about this all the time from my beloved Raiders, as you know. But frankly, when you're stuck at the quarterback position, a lot of times it's just hard to find that guy that you think can bring everybody in. And you got to have the coaches that can make that happen. So I don't think that there's necessarily a bridge gap answer. I think the Titans' best solution is to roll the dice again with Will Levis next year. And heck, if he's terrible, then you're going to replace him. And if he surprises everybody and continues to develop, well, then good on you. You didn't overdraft a quarterback this year, and you went out and got best player available.
Jason Fitz is our guest on the program. So you say run it back with Levis at quarterback. What about the GM and the coach?
No, I wouldn't know. Look, I was talking to everybody at Yahoo today about the Bears and their failings and this revolving door of who came in first and which came in next. And, the Bears are giving the vote of confidence to polls or whatever that means. And you start thinking about this, well, this wasn't my coach. And then you fire the coach, you hire a different coach. And then, well, he can't get the coach right. You fire the GM. You just get this never ending cycle, man. I've said this to you before. I will die on the hill that organizationally, sometimes you just got to look around and say, hey, we are just repeating insanity constantly. And sometimes I think it just takes a group coming in from the top down. Look at what they did when they made the changes frankly, in Washington this year, they took one of the worst franchises and they absolutely blew everything up in the way they do business. And now Washington looks to be 1,000 times better from it, right? And I think you look at some of the ways that you do this. I think, honestly, for me, if I was Amy Adams Strug, I'd be looking around saying, okay, who is the tandem? Who's the tag team? Who's the GM and coach that we're going to bring it together? They're going to have a common vision on exactly how to build this thing, and we're going to let them build it from the ground up. If we have to tear this thing down to the studs, I don't care. You're going to look at like a 6-year reclamation project, which is what, remember, Kyle Shanahan and John Lynch were given 6-year deals for the 49ers when they were brought in there. At the time, people thought that was crazy. Now you look at it and say, I think sometimes you just got to press the reset button with two guys that are aligned in philosophy, and you bring them in together and you drive the dang thing the right way. That's what the Lions did too. Brought in two guys that they believed in, took a minute to get it right, but now they have one of the better cultures in the NFL.
Well, they're going to say that that's what the Titans have. Like, that's what, well, hey, we brought in Carthon and he brought in Callahan and, we're building something, but they just keep getting worse.
I mean, and do you look at it and feel like it's building something? Like inside the building, when the Lions were 1-6, and I've talked to Aiden Hutchinson about this a couple of times. I asked him what changed, particularly because they started 1-6 in the second year of Dan Campbell, and everybody was screaming, "Oh, you can't keep the guy, you got to fire him." And the Lions came out and said, "Nope, we know exactly what we're doing." And if you I've talked to Amon-Ra St. Brown a couple of times, I've talked to Aiden Hutchinson a couple of times, and they both said the same thing. Internally, really nothing changed when they were 1-6. Like, they knew that they were better. They knew they were going to turn a corner. Everybody inside the hallway, like inside the facility, knew that they were going to be fine. Like, there was a level of confidence that the world doesn't see it, but we realized we're on the cusp of something. And then all of a sudden it turns out they were right. They went on a roll. What have we seen that internally or externally from the Titans? What have you felt the Titans, even players coming out and saying, hey, we got, like, this is right. We are right. Stay off our backs. We know exactly what we're doing. Like, where is that galvanizing us against the world, bite off their kneecaps junk that we sort of all made fun of with the Lions that actually turned out to be the part of the culture that they were creating? Like, I guess I would ask Titans fans, if you were told today to define what the culture of the Tennessee Titans is, what is it? What's your one sentence elevator pitch on what makes the Titans the Titans? Because I don't see it externally here.
Yeah. Last one for you. Jason Fitz is our guest. Mike Vrabel will be coaching where in 2025?
Honestly, I think the Raiders, and that's funny to me because, obviously I've been around Vrabel a bunch, with 1025 over the years. But the relationship with Tom Brady, I think, makes Vrabel a pretty easy candidate. I think the Raiders are going to end on a 15-game losing streak and clean house. So, when that happens, I think Vrabel ends up there. But it sounds like he's going to have a bunch of jobs. But also, Stillman, let's be honest with each other. Like, I thought he was going to have a bunch of jobs last year, right? Like, you were the one that to give you credit, you were the one that was like, no, I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think people are going to be clamoring for Vrabel. And turns out you were right, So I keep hearing from everybody we talk to that people are genuinely interested in Vrabel everywhere. But I don't know. I was wrong about it a year ago, but I do think. No, I think Ryan Day's going to be just fine. I think, I know everybody thinks Ryan Day's going to get fired, but all he has to do is win a couple of playoff games and they'll be just fine. And these playoffs could turn out just wild enough that that's easy for them to do. Like, the game is just a game now. Ryan Day will get fired if he loses in the first round of the playoffs. I don't think that'll happen to Ohio State.
Oh, man, I don't know. He never wins any big games. I mean, for whatever that's worth, he lost the game this year against Oregon. He lost congratulations. You can beat Penn State. The only other coach who can't ever win any big games. But that's just me. I get it. Hey, it's like a Michigan thing, and you don't have to play Michigan anymore, but I think I would fire him, but that's just me. Fitz, as always, great stuff. Appreciate you, bud.
Appreciate you, brother. Have a great week.
Yep, Jason Fitz joining us as always. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game, streaming live on Twitter, Twitch, YouTube, and Facebook live from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios. Predators in Toronto tonight. Hal Gil is with us from the booth. Hal, let's start right there on the game. Hal, I think they need to sweep the road trip. I mean, I keep hearing it's coming. Give us a time, give us a chance. Barry Trotz said on the show yesterday, he's giving them until Christmas, and if not, the kids are coming up. I think if we're being realistic, if the Predators are going to have any shot of getting back into this thing, they got to sweep the road trip, go 3 for 3. Am I being too dramatic, or is that where we are at this point in the year?
Well, you certainly need to see strides going forward. I think if you're looking at it like we need to sweep a road trip, you're not looking at it the right way. I think you got to look at it as the team has been playing well. They need to win a game. They need to get the confidence that it takes to win a game. They need to fight for it. They need to battle. It's going to be a challenge with Toronto. If you get the win tonight, you have the confidence going into tomorrow night against Montreal. Montreal hasn't had a great season. You can get momentum from a big win tonight, carry it into tomorrow for that win, and then you're going to Ottawa on a 2-game streak, and then you're winning that one. I think they need to get that ball rolling where their confidence is taking them to the next level. Scoring goals has been a problem, and they're defending well. They're going to need to do that against a pretty solid team tonight that had some high-end skill. But I think you look at trying to sweep a road trip, it's not easy to do, but a big win tonight really does propel you into that three-game sweep.
My thing would be, while it's not easy to do, it's what has to happen at this point. Like, you say that they're playing well. To me, they keep losing. Yeah, I mean, they have the least amount of wins in the conference. At some point, it either has to be they got to get hot and do something like sweep this road trip, or we got to give up and start thinking about the first overall pick.
Well, I think you're right. I mean, but you're looking at a broad stroke. I think you need to look at the finer detail. Is that if you want to go on a heater and you want to make tell Trotzy, hey, keep this team together, you're going to have to put wins together. But I think I'm speaking as a player's perspective, you got to get that one win. Yeah, you're right. It's not good enough to lose in overtime. They need to find a way to get wins. They need to find a way when they do get a lead to grow that lead and to have confidence in that position. I just think it starts with game one, and I'm only giving you my perspective as a player.
Sure.
As a GM. I think you're looking at a lot of different things, and you're trying to make a judgment based on your whole team's performance and what it's going to be moving forward. And so there's a lot more that goes into that. But as a player, it's win one game, get confidence from it, and then snowball it.
Steven Stamkos had his comments on Friday after the Tampa Bay loss about why they're not scoring, and said he had his own opinions why, and then did not go into detail. I actually heard that, Hal, and I didn't know if he was taking a shot at the coach or if he was taking a shot at his teammates. I didn't know. He's taking a shot at one or the other. We had Barry Trotz on yesterday, and I feel like I get a pretty good read on Barry. And when I asked Barry about Stamkos' comments, he said that there needs to be a partnership between the coach and the players, and that Stamkos and Brunette had a closed-door meeting, which makes me think that Barry took that as a shot at the coach. What do you make of what Stamkos said and what's happened since?
Yeah, I think you could see, that was coming after, I believe that was his quote was right after the loss to Tampa Bay at home.
Yep.
And obviously a more emotional game for him. Obviously he wants to beat that team, and they had him. They were right there, and they could have won that game. It got away from them. They lose it. And I think you saw the frustration. Now, when you're speaking to the media as a player, of course you want to say the right thing. You want to come out. It's kind of, it is what it is. You have to respond to the media. You have to talk. But, you could see the wheels turning in his head. He's had a lot of emotions going through. He didn't want to say the wrong thing in the heat of the moment. But I think he's certainly got a lot more thoughts. But I think when you try to pinpoint who he was talking about, I don't know if that's necessarily fair, because after a loss, and a loss like that in overtime, I'm sure he could have pointed at everyone on his team. He could have pointed at the coaches, the GM, the personnel. He could have complained about the staff. He could have complained about everything. And I think if you look at it this way, I think he could have looked at himself and said, "Hey, I'm not doing it." He said that, self-included, we need to be better. We need to create more scoring chances. He puts that on his shoulders, and he's with everyone else. I don't think that was pointed at anyone in particular. I think that was pointed at everyone, the whole situation. And, he knows it needs to get better, but it doesn't benefit, even though his thoughts are, everything's running through his head. It doesn't benefit him to start rolling over on his teammates or his coach or the GM, or even rolling over on himself. I think you got to take a deep breath and say, hey, we're in this together. And I think that's what you saw, that little pause, and said he had some thoughts, and then he said, okay, this is the right thing to say. And so I commend him on saying that, because it does no good to go and air your dirty laundry. I think you don't think these guys have meetings, Jared? They're having meetings all the time, whether it's with the coach or with the GM or with each other. There's a meeting after the meeting. The coaches come in, talk, and then the players talk amongst themselves, and ultimately they got to get on the same page. And so I think Stammer's been around a long time. He knows that bringing the media into it does not really solve anything. So I think he was just answering the right way, being honest, but also, showing that emotion, that he is frustrated.
That, Hal, I love you, man. That was an answer right there, baby. That was.
Well,
Did he do the right thing, or did he do the wrong thing? Because the way Trotz took it yesterday was like he did the wrong thing. And then the way you're saying it's like he did the wrong thing, but then he started to do the right thing, so he actually did the right thing.
Well, that's what I if you go out there and you battle and compete and you're frustrated and someone throws a camera and a mic in front of your face, it's you're in a tough spot. And I've been there, and I've been in, we're going through Toronto and Montreal, and if you say the wrong thing, if you look the wrong way, if you say, people are going to pick up on it and they're going to make their story. I think he was being honest. And I think that's what we want from our athletes. And I thought he handled it well, considering I imagine there's so many things going through his head.
Hal Gil is with us. I'm going to put you on the hot seat, Hal, if I may, for a second. Adam Vingan wants to fire the coach.
Go ahead.
Adam Vingan wants to fire the coach, and Willie was fired up about it today. When I got on the air, I looked at the text line, and it was just people screaming. So my question for you is this. This is what I say. I am not of the mindset to change the coach right now, because I think last year counts for something, and I think Burnett's a good coach, and I don't want to fire a good coach if I don't have to. But given where this team is right now, given what the problems with this team are, where we thought they should be, how we keep kind of moving the goalposts when it comes to them about, if they can get hot now, and if they can win this one, and if they can, and then they lose, and they're like, if they can win the next one. And as much as we do that, you've been in this league a long time. I can't disagree with people that want to fire the coach, even though I don't want to do it myself. And if I ran the team, I wouldn't fire the coach. Where do you sit kind of with, because I'm sure you hear it just, around about the chatter surrounding the coach.
Yeah, something has to change. So, ultimately, there's ownership, there's a GM, there's a coach, there's the players, there's a lot of things that you have to assess when you're losing. And if you're losing, things change. Someone's going to get traded. We've seen a couple little trades here, a couple moves here. We brought up some young guys. We moved other guys, Fabro and Tomasino. We got to move on. We got to make things right, and you got to do it the right way. Ultimately, if the coach isn't winning, then the coaches know that. Bruno knows that. If he doesn't win, he's not going to have a job for long. If the players aren't winning, they're not going to be on that team for long. They're going to get sent down, or they're going to get traded, or they're going to be, it's a tough league if you don't win. And so I think Barry Trotz has got to look at himself and then look at the team, and he's got to bounce things off, and they got to figure it out. I don't know what the right answer is, because you can be around the team, but you're not in that room. And if you're not in that room, you don't know what the right answer is. Is it the message not getting to the players? Are the players not responding to the message? What is the gap there, and what is causing these losses? I think you got to break it all down, and that's above my pay grade. I think you have to be in it to understand it. You have to be in it to solve it, and that's why, as a player, I wanted to be in it with my team. Like, you have to be in it together. Whether that doesn't mean you're all lovey-dovey and I love you, buddy, and you're going to come pull through it. That sometimes that's a fight in practice, or that's accountability, on the ice or in the locker room. Something's got to change so you can win. And if you don't win, then things start to change even more. And that's when coaches are let go, and we see it all the time. But I don't know what the right answer is, because I'm not in there.
Hal Gil, as always, with us on the program. Hal, have a great call tonight, and go get 3 wins, because I hate to say it, but you got to have it.
Well, if you got to have it, then I think we should go for it and get it. I'll let the
Coach
boys know.
Jared. Well, hey, remember last time what turned their
good
season
Lord.
around? Me on the trip to St. Louis last year. That's all I'm saying here on the program. Hal Gil, as always. We'll see you later, Hal.
Are you taking credit for that? Oh my!
I mean,
You're
it
a
did
beauty,
happen.
Jared.
It did happen. Predators
thank you
game
for
day
everything you've
is
done.
next here on Stillman and Company, 102.5 The Game. Predators Game Day presented by TJ Anderson Homes of Benchmark Realty, online at tjandersonhomes.com. Get your house seen, heard, and sold with TJ Anderson. Tonight, the Predators at the Toronto Maple Leafs at the Scotiabank Arena, right there next to that beautiful St. Regis in Toronto, where Ian, true story, last time I stayed there, they had a giant chocolate tower of the hotel for me, which I absolutely
Just for you?
adored. Well, I think it was really for the missus, but,
Okay,
whatever.
fun.
So good for them. But the Predators, they need something here. The Leafs are 15-7-2, good for 32 points. The Preds 7-12-6, good for 20 points. They have a 6.5% chance of making the playoffs, according to MoneyPuck.com. Here's the deal. They got to sweep the road trip. If they don't sweep the road trip, then I just cannot believe that they'll turn it around this season. As much as I want them to, here's what I will say about my feelings about the coach and the season and everything else. I'm rooting for him. Lord, am I rooting for him. But I'm betting against him. Because I've been waiting too long. And there's just too many screw-ups on a nightly basis, not enough offense, and I wait. Eventually, it is what it is. For me, this road trip, if I was running the team and assessing the coach and trying to save the season, this road trip would probably be the season. I think they need 3. I think they need to win all 3. I don't think they can lose in overtime and say, well, we got a point. They've been doing too much of that. I think they need to sweep the road trip. Good luck against Toronto tonight. That's it for us. We're out of here. The broadcast is next. They got the pregame. Robbie's up next. Stillman and Company. We'll see everybody tomorrow, too.